Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, April 11th. Thank you for joining us at the Council. We will begin this morning with two proclamations, and the first one will be a proclamation recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Month by Councilmember Katz and Councilmember Albornoz.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us. If I could ask anyone who's associated with this proclamation to please come forward. And as they're coming forward, notice that it's the whole audience. I just want everybody to notice. As they're coming forward, let me just say that April is National Child Abuse Awareness Month. As a community, it is our duty to keep children safe, know how to recognize signs of abuse, and report concerns immediately. And underline the word immediately. Our children certainly are our most vulnerable population, and we must protect them from abuse, both emotional and physical. Today, we're going to highlight two outstanding nonprofits, Treehouse Child Advocacy Center and the Voices of Children Montgomery. Treehouse serves uninsured and undocumented families in our county, with over 80% being Hispanic, African American, and other underrepresented groups. Voices of Children recruits and trains volunteers to serve abused and neglected children and advocates for children in foster care. To make a report of child abuse and neglect, please call Child Welfare Services at 240-777-4417, and they are open 24 hours. And to make a report of child sexual abuse, call Child Welfare Services and or the Special Victims Investigation Division, Montgomery County Police Department, 240-773-5400, and obviously they're open 24 hours. And for any emergency, we all know to call 911. Let's end child abuse once and for all. And with that, I would like to turn to my friend and colleague, the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, Gabe Albornoz.
Thank you so much, Chair Katz. So within the first 6 months of the first year of my first term, I was invited by incredible leaders and board members of the Treehouse to come and participate in their walkthrough session. And they invite members of the community, elected officials and leaders, to simulate what it's like for a child to go through the process that the Treehouse has done an excellent job of perfecting over a number of years, to show the care and love that our children in their greatest hour of need so desperately need. As the parent of 4 kids, though, I went home that night and cried, because the stories that were told to us are simply unimaginable. And this, unfortunately, happens every day in our society. We, as the adults in the room, as Chair Katz said, are charged with protecting our children. And we are fortunate to have incredible nonprofit organizations such as the ones that we are recognizing today, but also a Department of Health and Human Services who has dedicated so much of their passion and energy to treating and eradicating child abuse. But I also want to recognize the workers that are on the front lines doing this work. What they have to see and absorb and process almost every day is also unimaginable. But thank goodness that they have chosen this profession, which is as noble as it can be, in protecting those children. It is important for our children to know they are not alone, that families are not alone. And there has been federal legislation passed by President Biden that eliminates the federal statute of limitations for child sex abuse crimes so justice can prevail. But there's so much more that we need to do at the local level. So I know all of my colleagues and I are fully committed to this work, because there is no more important work than this work. And I want to thank Chair Katz for making sure that this proclamation was presented today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask, if I can do this, I'm going to ask for each to please identify yourself.
My name is Robin Harris. I'm the board president for Voices for Children Montgomery.
My name is John Celestin. I'm the Vice President of the Board for Voices for Children Montgomery.
I'm Francia Davis. I'm the Executive Director of Voices for Children Montgomery.
Oscar Mason, Social Services Officer for Montgomery County.
Lisa Merkin, Child Welfare Services.
Dr. Evelyn Shukat, Medical Director of the Treehouse.
I'm Molly Cupid. I'm the Clinical Director of the Treehouse.
Thank you. If you could please give Ms. Shukat, Dr. Shukat, the mic, and if you would like to say a few words, please.
Well, I want to thank you very much this morning for this tremendous honor. And it's a privilege to work every day at the Treehouse along with Molly and all the social workers and other clinicians. Every day we want to help more kids, and we're thankful that the children trust us, and we try to make their lives better so they grow up to be functioning and happier adults.
Thank you so much. Ms. Davis, please.
Well, I would also like to thank you, and I would like to say Montgomery County has been a very strong supporter of Voices for Children Montgomery since we were founded in 1987. And as a lifelong Montgomery County resident, I am seriously proud to be living in a county that supports its nonprofit community.
Thank you. We're seriously proud that you're seriously proud. Let me just tell you. And with that, Gabe and I are going to read this proclamation. Sounds like it's on to me. Whereas Treehouse Child Advocacy Center and Voices for Children are working tirelessly to prevent child abuse and neglect and to build stronger families and communities in our county to promote safe, stable, and nurturing environments for all of our children. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and be it further resolved that the County Council encourages residents to recognize this month by dedicating ourselves to the task of improving the quality of life for all children and families and raising awareness about child abuse prevention. It's presented today and it's signed by me and Council President Evan Glass. Thank you all very, very much. We have one for
Thank you, council members Katz and Albornoz, for that proclamation, and to all those who attended for all the good work that they do in our community, keeping our children healthy and safe. We have one more proclamation this morning, and that is recognizing National Public Health Week, and that will be led by the chair of our HHS committee, Councilmember Albornoz.
Doctor, come on down. Well, good morning, good people. It is great to be with all of you today as we once again take a moment to celebrate the importance of public health in our community. One of the silver linings, and there were some, not very many, of COVID, was the recognition of the importance of public health in all of our lives. The recognition that somebody's health in Wheaton should matter to somebody's health in Damascus, that somebody's health in Bethesda should matter to somebody's health in Silver Spring, because we are all connected in every way imaginable. And every decision that this body makes, every single one, directly impacts the public health of our community every day here in Montgomery County. And it is a responsibility that I and all of my colleagues take very, very seriously. We are fortunate to have extraordinary public health leaders and professionals in all three of our public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And we are joined by three outstanding leaders today who are national leaders in many respects and are on the front lines of ensuring the interconnectivity and addressing the social determinants of health that lead to disparities in public health that are frankly immoral. There's a lot more work that we need to do, but it is important especially that we take the time to recognize and thank the professionals that have chosen this profession. Because not only do they save lives, but they strengthen communities. And so I know I speak on behalf of all of my colleagues in extending our appreciation to all of them. The theme of this year's Public Health Week is centering and celebrating cultures in health. We, of course, often speak about the fact that 4 of the top 10 most diverse small cities in the United States of America are right here in Montgomery County, which absolutely is something to celebrate. But we also have to recognize that that brings a special level of responsibility, and that is especially true in the public health space. Dr. Bridgers has been speaking often about the department's focus on providing services with cultural humility, and I couldn't agree more. So with that, I want to bring these three outstanding leaders to speak now, starting with Dr. James Bridgers, who is our acting HHS director. Dr. Bridgers.
Good morning. Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz. Thank you to the entire council, Council President Glass, Council Vice President Friesen, and the work that you continue to do with us under the Health and Human Services space. It is National Public Health Week, but as Councilmember Albornoz stated, the policies and the guidance that were set forth during the past 3 years were absolutely life-saving. We led the nation in our metrics. We have great colleagues behind me who will speak, but without our community, without our key stakeholders, without you, we could have not done this. We continue to do work. We continue to look at equity, diversion, inclusion. There's much work that we need to do around somatic and physical care. Mental health is at the forefront of our approach now under the Health and Human Services space. Look for more information about where we are going forward in the mental health space. We owe it to our community to lessen harm, to mitigate any risk, and suppress the further use of substances that harm and kill our adolescents. We hope that all of these things come together for the greater good. And as we operate in this space, we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz and the entire council. I am Dr. Keisha Davis, your County Health Officer, and I'm excited to join you for this proclamation on National Public Health Week. As a generations-long member of Montgomery County and as a family physician, I understand the importance of public health, how policy programs and services impact our communities. And while the recent work of public health has not been without challenges, our public health employees have risen to meet the challenge with enthusiasm and dedication. I want to specifically recognize the efforts and focus on mitigating COVID-19 through offering masks, testing, vaccination free to the public. Without these efforts, we would have seen the impact of COVID-19 in our communities to have been much worse, and we will also have seen a much worse disparity. I want to echo how good we did with COVID in our communities and lessening that disparity. Our public health staff work tirelessly every day on important efforts such as disease surveillance, health services, collecting and analyzing data, conducting health education and outreach, and assisting and leading community groups and efforts. Public health is a cornerstone. It promotes and protects the health of people and communities where they live, work, worship, and play. The county health rankings came out last week, and Montgomery County, again, is at the top of the list for Maryland, but we don't rest on our laurels. And we recognize that we continue to look under the surface and make sure that we are working to mitigate health disparities, and our public health workforce and the work that the council does every day helps to mitigate those. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Rogers.
First, thank you, Council Member Albernos and fellow council members for recognizing National Public Health Week. I, in part, was led into public health based on my own story. Being a single dad of 3 children in my early 20s, I relied heavily on Medicaid for myself, children's health insurance program for my children, food stamps to feed my children, as well as free dental care. So I understand the importance of the wraparound services that we offer within Montgomery County to ensure that our residents not only have their health care needs met, but also their social service needs met. And so I thank our fellow public health colleagues, the community-based organizations that we partner with, who all come together to ensure that we deliver person-centered care services to all of our residents, to ensure that we address the obesity, the diabetes, ensure that our children have access to immunizations, but also ensure that we're able to make sure people have stable housing, have food to eat on their table. I work with Council President Albernos on work to end childhood food hunger. And I'm grateful for that because I once experienced that so real within my life. And so thank you to my colleagues, to my coworkers behind me, for all of the public health community, social service organizations, the county executive office, as well as fellow council members for the great work you do in order to advance public health in this county.
Yeah, that was great. Feels like applauding. All right, so now I'm going to read this long proclamation, but it's a good one. Whereas National Public Health Week is an annual opportunity to recognize the contributions of public health in improving the lives of Montgomery County residents and achieving health equity as demonstrated in this year's American Public Health Association's theme, Centering and Celebrating Cultures in Health, which embodies the mission of public health to promote and protect the health of people and the communities where they live, work, learn, and play. And whereas Montgomery County is home to many diverse cultures, all of which experience different health impacts based on unique backgrounds and circumstances, while the county ranks first for most health outcomes and health factors among Maryland counties, it is essential that localized data be collected to identify important trends and increase availability of appropriate and accessible care among our diverse populations. And whereas mental health is a critical component of public health, that includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being from childhood through adulthood, and is the most important health problem identified by county residents, while suicide and substance abuse, especially among our youth, are also urgent public health crises facing our community. And whereas health in all policies is a collaborative approach that integrates health considerations into policymaking across all sectors to improve the health of all communities and is a priority in our county. And whereas the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services Public Health Services team work daily to prevent, prepare, mitigate, and recover from disease and other public health threats, foster public-private partnerships to increase access to health services, develop and implement programs to address community health needs, provide health education, and monitor, evaluate, and assess community health data and health strategies to improve the overall health of all county residents. Now therefore be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County hereby proclaims April 3rd through April 9th as National Public Health Week 2023. And be it further resolved that the County Council urges all residents to learn about the role of public health in strengthening the public health system and workforce to help address social and other determinants of health and improve the lives of all Montgomery County residents, and acknowledge the expertise and dedication of our public health workforce. Presented on this 11th day of April in the year 2023, signed by myself and the Council President. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Albernaz, for that proclamation, and for our three doctors and healthcare professionals across county government for keeping us healthy and safe during the pandemic, and currently as well. We're now going to move on to general business. Madam Clerk, do we have any announcements?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. We have just one announcement today. Item 11L on our consent calendar, the resolution to appoint the Special Projects Manager, has been deleted. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. The clerk has circulated the minutes for February 9th, 27th, and 28th, and also March 7th, March 13th, and March 14th. Are there any changes? Not seeing any. Those are approved. We're now going to go to the first item on the agenda. That is a briefing on the FY23 to 28 Capital Improvements Program, and we will receive a status update from Ms. McGuire, Mr. Levchenko, Dr. Orlin, and Mr. Mia, all who are here and ready.
Good morning. Today we're intending to provide a fiscal update to you on the status of the amended CIP. We're entering our operating budget phase in mid-April, but we still have a fair amount of work to do on the CIP. The council began its process essentially when the executive transmitted his recommendations in mid-January. Most of those original recommendations have been reviewed and preliminarily decided by the council. We do have some further work to do, however. The executive sent over recommendations in mid-March, so those still will need to be reviewed and decided by the council. And we also have reconciliation to do to make all the numbers work, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is where the numbers are. And we do have a slide presentation to help walk us through this briefly. The packet itself has a more detailed gap chart that we'll be referring to, but we're not going to get into the level of detail of that chart today. I just wanted to focus on a few key assumptions. First, we're talking about general obligation bonds only at this point. That's a key building block of the CIP, of course, in terms of local funding. However, it can be affected by a lot of other things. It can be affected by outside revenue sources going up or down, and adjusting our affordability perspective on the GeoBond side of things. So that's very important to keep in mind as well, and we'll get into some of those issues. With regard to a starting point, how we start this gap process, we start it when the executive transmits his recommendations, or transmitted his recommendations in mid-January. His macro assumptions and revenues and expenditures balanced by fund, so that's a good starting point. However, we have to make a lot of adjustments to that to reflect the council's actions. And a couple of key points there. The council's spending affordability guidelines are a key assumption regarding our GeoBond affordability. And in the executive's transmittal, he had a different set of spending affordability guidelines than us, so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then also, we've noted in the assumptions, recordation tax revenue projections, and there are some changes there we'll talk about. And also PAYGO. PAYGO is an ongoing issue the council will need to ultimately decide by mid-May. Any additional PAYGO helps the CIP, but draws down what's available on the operating budget. And then, as I mentioned, there's still some final issues we have to work through, including the executive's March 15th amendments, and also the recently concluded state legislative session. We have to make sense of all of the actions the state did, and how the state aid that's coming our way affects the CIP, as well as the operating budget, of course. Next slide, please. So first, and we've talked with this with the council earlier this cycle. When the executive transmitted his recommendations in January, he included affordability reconciliation projects for NCPS, the college, and parks. This is something that this executive and the past executive have done, it reflects undesignated reductions that would be needed in these portions of the CIP in order to balance the executive's numbers. So from the executive's perspective, these cuts would balance his CIP. But from the council's perspective, we ultimately have to designate how that's going to happen. Whether we're going to find those exact reductions or deferrals in those areas or make adjustments elsewhere in the CIP to offset these. So this slide just shows a summary of those three. And the total is about $48 million. So that's a starting gap in terms of reductions that would be needed just to get to where the executive is. So that's a key component. Next slide, please. The other issue I'd mentioned before, the spending affordability assumptions. The council's approved spending affordability from assumed in the approved CIP and what the executive recommended in January are different. The executive had recommended an increase in the bonds planned for issue in 24 and 25 by $20 million in each year. The council, in its February discussions and action on SAG, reiterated its support for the approved 6-year total for its spending affordability guidelines, and it decided on the annual amounts based on the February of 2022 approved spending affordability that council had done. So the 6-year total was $40 million less than what the executive had recommended, and that's the approved level, and then made some adjustments annually. So that $40 million difference plus the $48 million I mentioned earlier also adds to the gap going forward. So that was about an $88 million gap. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Mia to continue this discussion on some additional macro changes the council is now assuming compared to the executive recommendation.
Thank you, Keith. So next I'll talk about PAYGO, which as you know is current revenue that's used to offset bond expenditures. So in this January 17 CIP, the CE assumed additional $4 million of PAYGO in FY24 and 25, $2 million each. The council, in its SAG discussion, accepted those recommendations and programmed those resources in the CIP, in its preliminary CIP. The council also recommended a one-time increase of $80 million in FY24 based on additional income tax revenues that had been received by the county. Next slide, please. Okay. However, in his March 15th operating budget recommendation, the CE did not assume that $80 million in FY24. It was instead programmed in the operating budget. As you know, PAYGO again is cash, so it can be used in operating or CIP. So that $80 million, or the non-programming of those $80 million creates another additional gap. Next slide. In addition, on March 15th, the CE transmitted revised recordation tax estimates. These estimates were essentially $61 million lower than what had been previously assumed over the 6-year period, thus creating a $61 million gap. There were also some additional macro adjustments for inflation, slippage, adding about another $4 million to the CIP. Next, I'll turn it over to Ms. McGuire.
Thank you. So we want to just touch briefly, the council and committees, of course, have done a great deal of work to review projects related to the capital improvements program. This slide shows some of those changes. Now, of course, the changes are more limited this year because it is an amendment year. And I do want to highlight that the gap overall does assume refunding most requested expenditures, both for the schools and for the Department of Transportation in the county, meaning that the gap we are working with does not assume the bulk of those affordability reductions that the executive have put forward. Again, as has been discussed, that's in large part because the council does have to make those specific decisions, and so at this stage the gap assumes that all of those are in play. Any reductions obviously will improve that gap. Next slide, please. And so as a result, all of these puts and takes that we've walked through do lead us to a cumulative estimated general obligation bond gap of approximately $207.5 million across the 6-year period. That is a significant amount. Assuming no major changes in revenue assumptions, that does lead us to reductions and deferrals. We do want to note that even if we were to apply all of the non-recommended reductions put forward across all of the agencies, That would still leave us with an estimated gap in the 6-year period of $51 million. That is primarily related to the spending affordability assumptions that the executive made that are not approved by the council. So again, we do just want to emphasize this. This is an issue that will take some work. Next slide, please. However, obviously that's what we're here to do. We wanted to provide this update to the council at this stage of your deliberations and of the process as we enter this affordability period. There are additional committee and council reviews of the March 15th CIP amendments, the additional non-recommended reductions put forward by the agencies, of course, as was mentioned, state aid from Sinai, and we'll continue to monitor any other macro assumptions that need to be revised as we go, and of course come back to you with any updates, and also in May for a final reconciliation. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and for anyone who's following, lots of macro and micro details in your presentation, but the headline is that there is a $207 million gap, with $500,000 added to that, to be precise. And so we do have a lot of work on our end. There are a lot of honest conversations that we need to have with different agencies, departments, and communities about the projects that they're expecting and the timeline at which we can expect to deliver them. One question I have, and I welcome comments and questions from colleagues if you have any. The question I have is, as we continue this discussion, the executive recently sent over further reductions, and I think you alluded to that, but if you could just restate the work that we have ahead of us in the coming weeks.
So those, as you mentioned in the March 15th transmittal, the executive did send additional reductions, primarily again to respond to the lower recordation tax revenues. Those reductions are embedded in the assumptions that we put forward in the gap, so from that perspective, the gap won't get bigger. However, the council and the committees have not yet taken up the bulk of those, so there will be additional puts and takes to the CIP as the committees continue their work and the council continues to hear those. Those could make the gap better or worse, depending on whether that's an increase or a decrease that the committees and councils assume. So that will be ongoing and will be part of those additional steps that we take. In addition, again, those reductions included further non-recommended reductions from the agencies. Those will also be forthcoming.
Thank you. Councilmember Ludke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know you've highlighted that we're having a $270 million gap. Sorry? 207. 207.
207.
Sorry, I put the zero in the wrong place, but thank you. Nevertheless, this budget also assumes that there will be a structural deficit of $145 million in FY25, too, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So, my concern is that there's a lot of things that happened prior to, many of us arriving here, that definitely involved budgeting using one-time funds that came from COVID relief that were not sustainable over time and that were directed specifically to address emergency issues, but then ended up being incorporated into ongoing funding requirements that the county would have without necessarily an increased county revenue source coming in to do that. And it, for me, I would not want to spend taxpayer money any differently than I spend my own money. And I wouldn't buy things that I know I can't pay for down the road, right? We all know how that works out for consumers and consumer credit problems. As a county and as fiscal stewards of taxpayer dollars, we shouldn't be doing that with taxpayer funds, because knowing that we would create a $145 million structural deficit for the next fiscal year is really extreme. And so I am wondering if there's been any explanation from the county executive and their staff about what the proposal is with respect to the ongoing deficit that is anticipated by doing what the county executive is recommending.
So I do think that the next item on your agenda will get more into the details
Okay.
of the operating budget. That will be the subsequent presentation, and I believe that then can have a more in-depth conversation on those issues with the executive staff present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just know that this is where I have a lot of heartburn, and that's for you all and for the rest of my colleagues as well, that I'm really uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable with the gap in what is proposed and what is realistic, both in terms of the CIP and the operating budget, because and frankly, that's what residents are concerned about as well, the unrealistic nature of what's being put forth. So thank you.
And with that said, with a full CIP next year, we may be looking at trying to reset the CIP next year to be more realistic to our funding availability. So as with the operating budget, looking at what's going to happen next year, we have to look at the CIP as well. This year, since we're in an amendment year, we try not to overwhelm everyone with every project. We try to honor the biennial nature of the CIP, but you're right, we are in a situation where we'll need to look at that very carefully for next year.
Right, and fully respecting that we're in the interim phase right now, and fair enough, we do know too that costs of construction are increasing and have increased, and that is part of the reason why we have gaps that we do have and delays and things that we are doing. But we really need to be extremely cognizant of that we're being very cautious about that, because the public doesn't get to go deep in the weeds on this. We do. It's our job to do that. But yet we also need to be able to explain to them the why of what is happening. And it's really hard when sound bites are out there in the media promising the sun, the moon, and the stars, when in reality the money is not there to do those things. And I just feel like we owe a responsibility to the public to be open, transparent, and extremely honest about our fiscal situation. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember, there are definitely similarities between the CIP budget and the operating budget, and we will get to that second part in a few minutes. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments of Councilmember Lutke, and I agree with many of those comments. I have some process questions as we go through this, and so at what point will we have certainty from the state, and what can we expect, and what types of funding are you anticipating, and how much, if any?
Well, we literally just wrapped up the session, so we need to run those numbers. Every year, state aid for school construction is a major component of the CIP. How much we get versus how much we had assumed initially, and it's not just in the next year, but the assumptions for future years. I mean, that's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So the state aid component for schools that alone is a huge piece. But then, of course, you also have the transportation side and revenues there, Montgomery College, individual bond bills, and whether those will require additional spending or matches for us, or whether it is additional money that can offset our local expenses. All that has to be looked at, given that we now have a completed session.
And what does the timing look like for that?
Well, now that it is done, we can wrap that up within the next couple of weeks. The executive likely will also send over some revised projects based on the results of the session. So we will see additional amendments likely coming over where needed to address those changes. So the council will be actively dealing with that between now and mid-May.
Okay, and then alluding to that, the supplemental appropriations for the CIP that will come through, how are they taken into consideration for FY23? So we continue to get, and this kind of goes into the next conversation of operating. So how are we tracking that in terms of how it impacts this gap?
Well, each year, as part of the CIP, we establish bond set-asides for the 6-year period, including the first year. And so last year, when the full CIP was approved, there was a set-aside established for FY23. the Office of Management and Budget tracks that set aside to all of the draws on it from supplemental appropriation requests that are bond funded. And so those are tracked carefully, and we work with OMB on that. And so as part of the January transmittal and then as part of the Executive's March transmittal, that set aside was updated based on all of the known supplementals that had occurred and were also being transmitted by the Executive.
Okay.
So we are very careful not to exceed that set aside that was established last year for FY23.
In some cases also, sometimes it is additional funding that comes out of the reserve, as Mr. Levchenko was saying. Some of the supplementals that you've seen also have been to advance appropriation authority so that work can begin. So a good example is the relocatables supplemental for school system. They have to do that work over the summer. The expenditures will be in the next fiscal year, and so they're embedded in the 24 assumptions, but the appropriation has to happen earlier so that they can begin the contracting process in their work. So sometimes it's a crossover supplemental as well, and again, we would account for that on both sides of the ledger.
And then from the perspective of the $40 million difference in spending affordability guidelines, so I'm assuming that one of the decisions that we have to make is whether we agree with that or not. And does that require a vote from us to make that change?
Yeah, to exceed the guidelines that you set in February, you need 8 affirmative votes. Okay. In the 32 years prior to this, that's happened only 3 times, and the last time was over 20 years ago.
Okay, great. Last question. Will we get, in the recordation tax write down, will we get another update before our budget decisions on that for FY23?
The GO committee meeting is meeting on the bill on April 24th, and we have the estimates in the bill are from finance themselves. So I don't think we're going to get another update from them, because the analysis that they did for the bill was based on the most recent update.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcom. And as you asked and as was noted, sine die was last night, this morning, however you want to parse it, at midnight. I think we all appreciate the work that our members in the General Assembly did to bring back $1.1 billion in aid to Montgomery County, which will go to our schools and community college and transportation, some of which are operating and some of which are capital as well. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. I also appreciate the comments of my colleagues. Noting that we do have an option on the table for new revenue that we're considering with Bill 1723, the recordation tax proposal, I wondered if central staff could put together some rough CIP options for what things could look like with and without the recordation tax increase to help us make those judgments.
We'd be happy to, and we can certainly have those for the committee review if that's...
That'd be great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning, and appreciate all the work. And yes, I think that following on Councilmember Mink's point, that'll be helpful to just understand what we're dealing with. The question I wanted to ask related to the CIP, I'll hold the operating budget stuff for now, is how much of this gap is related to cost increase versus new projects?
So I can comment briefly on the schools and the college, and I believe Dr. Orland will comment on transportation, but certainly the bulk, the vast majority of the request from both the schools and the college was due to cost increases and not new projects. There were some new projects and some new scope, but overall in the 2 education budgets, it was related to cost.
Yeah, and I think just to put a finer point on that, and you don't have it today, I think this is part of the story we need to tell the public. This is different. I've gone through several of these. This is not new projects and people coming saying, this is to do what we said we were going to do. And what we said we were going to do were things that have been, some of the things that have been in the CIP since I was in high school. And So the context in everything is important. And we have to be honest with our residents. Because we had CIP budget hearings, and, there were tears shed. People were coming in talking about the students, about the conditions. They're talking about transportation projects. If we want the community that we want, we have to pay for it. And we have to be honest with residents about what that's going to cost, and we have to make those tough decisions. But I think the big difference this year for me, and for colleagues that are new, is that this is not a wish list of new projects. These are things we've said we were going to do in some cases for decades, that are in desperate need and that the community wants. And and so I just think we should quantify that in some way. Of, is it 80%, 90%? Like what of that gap is related to cost increase versus new projects? I just think that's an important story to tell. Mr. Orland, Dr. Orland.
On the transportation side, it's a little bit different story, because on the school side, a lot of the increases are because the projects are ready to go, very close to ready to go, so there was actually design that's been done, and they have better cost estimates now. The transportation projects, for the most part, were delayed by the executive, or proposed for delay by the executive, to beyond 6 years. So what the committee and the council has done so far is to not accept those delays. Effectively, that puts more money within the 6-year period, but it did not increase, except with one exception, did not increase the cost estimate. So the $67 million or so add back, if you will, in transportation is strictly putting those same projects back on their original schedule. And I have to say, most of those projects are probably going to cost a lot more once we get to the point of actually having design being finished. Many of those projects, the costs have not been updated for years. So the deficit is really actually quite a bit more than $67 million.
Oh,
and as expressed in the CIP, it's about $67 million.
I appreciate that. And, the other point is, we as a body, and I was a part of this and didn't support it, but it happened, and I was on the body, tied our hands behind our back a little bit on the funding that goes to support the CIP. When we changed the subdivision staging policy to the growth and infrastructure plan. And that's why this bill, this recordation tax bill, is really important, because as Mr. Levchenko mentioned, this doesn't get rosier next year when we do the full CIP. And you just alluded to it as well, Dr. Orland, when we're looking at the actual cost of the transportation projects, when they're happening. The schools, it's certainly the same thing. And while inflation has slowed, it hasn't stopped. And so we have to have a real serious conversation about how long are we going to let that structural deficit to do the things we said we were going to do continue. And we have to fix it. And that's why I co-sponsored that bill. I think it's not going to fix it completely, but it'll help a lot. We're going to have to do other things as well. So appreciate this presentation, and look forward to working on it through our committee process and GO and with all colleagues to try to figure this out in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments from colleagues. I was going to make a similar point that the deficit is mostly in the rise in costs, and I think that quantifying that would be helpful for all of us and for our public. And I think we're all sort of saying the same thing, but from different angles and level setting expectations of residents. It's important to remember we've been very aggressive with our CIP over the last 16 years. I mean, really aggressive. When you look at all of the projects that have been built and that we have been able to get off the ground, there's a lot to be proud of. And what we are seeing today was unavoidable. And while we're obviously going to have to look for, the possibility of additional revenues, we're going to come to this point, and until we enhance the economic development opportunities and overall tax base, we're going to continue to have this problem for the foreseeable future. And next year will be the year where things are going to be especially difficult. But I'll also say we've been here before, and we have spawned innovation during some of these challenging times. The library refreshes are an example of that. The consolidation of the recreation center and library in Wheaton is an example of that, where the county thinks proactively about how to combine projects in a way that saves taxpayer dollars and keeps some of these projects in the queue. But I think I look forward to these ongoing conversations, the operating budget that we're about to dive into. But this is all something that we're going to have to be able to explain well to our residents. But we need to not forget that we've done some really great things too. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for those comments. There are an upcoming Education and Culture Committee work session, Transportation and Environment Committee work session to further take on these additional reductions, help close the gap, but this conversation will continue. So thank you to the four of you for that presentation, which dovetails into our briefing on the FY24 budget that the county executive introduced last month. And so Ms. Michelson and Mr. Howard and members of the executive branch will be joining us as well. And before I turn it over to Mr. Howard and Ms. Michelson, I will just say to colleagues and to our residents that I know we all appreciate the work that the executive branch has done to create a budget that continues keeping our residents healthy, safe, housed, educated. And the $6.8 billion that is in that budget is a lot of money. And one of our preeminent responsibilities is to make sure that our county is in fiscal order. And so that is how we start this conversation. Having budgetary authority, final budgetary authority, is an incredibly powerful tool and one that none of us take lightly. And so as we enter into this conversation, we will be keeping the welfare of our residents in the front of our mind and the sustainability of this budget close to it. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Michelson.
Good morning, council members. This overview kicks off your review of the operating budget. It will be followed by public hearings this afternoon, this evening, and on Thursday, committee work sessions, council work sessions, and adoption in a little bit more than 6 weeks. I want to start out by thanking all of my colleagues who worked on this effort. First, to our executive branch colleagues who are always very cooperative with us. We appreciate all your work on the operating budget and especially appreciate your willingness to be so gracious as we bombard you with questions during this time of year. I also want to thank the colleagues who worked on this memo, predominantly Craig Howard, Aaron Tromka, Selena Mendy-Singleton, and with that, we'll talk a little bit about what's in the memo. So what we're going to be going through today is the context for this operating budget. We'll provide a summary of the key elements, the revenues, the expenditures, workforce, and compensation. You will have opportunities going forward to get into more depth on each of these issues. We'll talk a little bit about the racial equity and social justice approach to this budget, and also the adherence or lack thereof to the council's fiscal policies, and finally the council president's recommended approach to how the council will review the operating budget. So to start off a little bit with the context. This is the second year in a row of a high growth budget. It was followed by, in FY21, just at the beginning of the pandemic, a same services budget. In FY22, we were fortunate enough to get significant federal funding, which not only helped to balance the budget, but add a lot of new programs that were going to help our residents during the pandemic. FY23 is a little bit of a different story. Large growth in the budget, mostly due to increase in revenues associated with all of the growth that had gone on in the 2018, 19, and 20 in personal income, in the real estate market. So our revenue picture was good last year, and we had a lot of remaining federal fundings, and those were the basis of that budget. This year tells a different story. This year we no longer have any federal funding. We still, as part of our reserves, have the remainder of that increase in income taxes, but it's not forecast going forward. So the budget is balanced on using two key mechanisms. One is a 10% or 10-cent property tax, which you're aware of. and also the use of one-time resources, including money that is in the reserve, and additionally some money from ITOC recapture, some lapse money, and that will be one of the concerns we talk about in more detail. You're all aware of the 10% property tax increase. This generates $223 million, or $22.1 per cent of increase. And we note that this is on top of significant increases in assessed value in property. So as you're hearing from some residents concerned about the cost, it's not simply the tax increase, but there are increases in the assessed values. And in this last cycle for the county, the average increase was 19.8%. At the same time, we note that there's a lot of concern and uncertainty about the economy. U.S. GDP has dropped from 5.7 million, billion in 2021. 5.7% increase in 2021 to less than 1% increase in 2022. It's projected to stay less than 1% in 2023 as well. And global predictions are also for lower growth throughout the world. Our finance department has projected a mild recession that is reflected in this budget, and decreased revenue forecasted for the years after this coming year. So we'll be talking a little bit about those revenue projections as well. So as a result, council staff has some significant concerns with the long-term sustainability of the executive's recommended budget. First, as we've mentioned, the use of one-time reserves to fund ongoing programs is inconsistent with the council's adopted fiscal policy. $159 million are taken from reserves, and of that, $30 million are identified as one-time uses, meaning that $129 million are use of one-time resources for ongoing expenses. And as I noted, there are some other limited one-time resources that are also used as part of this budget. The budget over a 2-year period shows a growth of 16.8% in tax-supported expenditures. Now, most of this is due to compensation, but there's also been significant growth in the size of government. In the 2-year period, the county government alone, it would increase over 554 positions, and all agencies over 1,300 new positions. And at the same time, there are still significant vacancies in county government. So we have to reconcile that. There is a the funding for MCPS for the school system would commit the county to future funding due to the maintenance of effort law. This year, maintenance of effort, or the costs in the budget for MCPS, are $264 million over MOE. Next year, just based on increases in enrollment and using these numbers, there would be a $21.6 million increase in the costs of the school system. And that is before talking about any growth, whether it be in compensation or programs other than to account for the increase in students. So as a result, you take the use of these one-time resources, the annualization of compensation programs, and MOE, and that is what leads us to this projected deficit of $145 million. And we'll provide a little bit more detail on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Howard to get into some of the details on revenues.
Thank you and good morning. We'll start by reviewing estimated tax-supported revenues in FY24 with this chart, which shows the percent change in tax-supported revenues going all the way back to FY01. So if you kind of step back and look at the chart and look at the trends, you can see large growth rates pre-Great Recession, when we had a very significant economic growth across the country. Excuse me. Then you can see the decline in revenues caused by the Great Recession, including kind of the bottom period in FY11, where revenue growth was actually negative. And then that's followed, coming out of the Great Recession, by fairly moderate but steady growth. In FY17, we have a higher rate of growth, and that's shown by the yellow bar in the chart, and that was the last year that there was a property tax increase. And then the past 2 years, we've had the 6% growth in FY23, which Ms. Michelson mentioned, and then the 7.4% growth rate recommended by the executive in FY24, which is shown in the red bar. The 7.4% primarily results from the recommended tax increase. Without the tax increase, growth would be a bit over the historical average since the Great Recession of 3%. Of note, however, is the projected growth rates in the out years from FY25 through 29, which are shown on the far right of the chart. And the annual average for these years combined is 2.7%. So not only is this below the FY23 and FY24 numbers, it's also below the 3% historical average coming out of the Great Recession. This next slide breaks down the sources of the $411.8 million in increased tax-supported revenues for FY24 in a couple of different categories. And as you can see at the top, the property tax increase accounts for over half of the new revenue, 54.2%. The net growth in all other taxes is $46.3 million. And so this essentially represents the growth in the tax base in FY24, or what we would have achieved without the property tax increase. Ms. Michelson mentioned the income tax offset credit recapture, so there's $13.8 million assumed in the budget related to this, and this reflects Finance's estimate of funds that will not be paid out for the ITOC based on the new state requirement that homeowners must apply for the homestead tax credit to be eligible to receive the ITOC. This is included as a one-time revenue in FY24 and is not assumed in the out years. Intergovernmental aid is the second largest source of revenue increase in FY24 at $92 million, when nearly all of this is the result of state aid for MCPS and state aid for mass transit. And the last item I wanted to highlight is the large increase of $32.9 million for investment income. And this relates to increases in the federal funds rate that the Federal Reserve has done to deal with inflation. And while this does boost revenue in some of the county's short-term investment funds, nearly $27 million of this will accrue to and by law must remain in the Revenue Stabilization Fund. So this is not money that's available to fund other programs and services. So this next slide provides a bit more detail on three key tax revenues that we talk about each year. First, property taxes, and overall the growth in property taxes is $274 million, and most of this, as we mentioned, is due to the proposed tax increase, but at the same time the county is experiencing higher assessments, so that plays into the revenue estimates as well for this year and going forward. Income tax tends to be the most volatile of the county's taxes, and we've seen that from the past few years. Income taxes have been largely responsible for the increase in revenues beyond projections in both FY22 and FY23. And then at the same time, you can see that two of the key variables that drive income tax revenues are showing different trends. Finance estimates that personal income will decrease by 0.6%, while wage and salary income will increase by 4.4% from 2021 to 2022. So we'll see going forward how this impacts this revenue. And as you heard already this morning, recordation and transfer taxes are down substantially, both in FY23 collections and FY24 projections. Turning now to expenditures, the executive recommends a tax-supported increase of $478.7 million, or 8.7% across all agencies. And as you can see on the chart, MCPS and county government are receiving the majority of this increase. This next slide provides a little bit more detail on what some of the key building blocks are for the expenditure increases in FY24, focusing on primarily county government and MCPS. Within county government, the $169 million increase comes from annualization of FY23 compensation adjustments and lapsed positions, which accounts for about $41.6 million. Proposed FY24 compensation adjustments, which accounts for $51.6 million. Proposed net new positions is about $8.8 million. And then there's a one-time lapse assumption, and this is tax-supported dollars only, so this is $14.8 million in savings that helps fund other parts of the budget. And everything else that's included in the county government, all the other puts and takes, programmatic increases, increased costs due to inflation or cost of service increases, net out to about an increase of $82.3 million. For MCPS, the biggest components are the $223 million increase in the local contribution, as well as about $68 million in increases in non-county funds. And while the Board of Education is responsible for making final determinations on how to allocate those dollars based on the council's final budget appropriation, the board's request does have two key building blocks, including a $201 million placeholder for compensation adjustments and $46 million for new initiatives. This next slide looks at changes in the workforce, and it shows the changes in tax-supported FTEs or full-time equivalents over the past 2 years by agency. The net increase is a little bit over 1,300 FTEs, or 3.9% overall. And again, similar to the expenditures, the large increases are primarily in Montgomery County government and Montgomery County Public Schools. For county government, the executive's recommendation would add 454 FTEs over the past 2 years. And it's also important to note, as Ms. Michelson mentioned, that there are about 1,200 vacancies in tax-supported positions overall within county government. The executive did negotiate pay and benefit adjustments for county government employee bargaining units in FY24, as well as recommending adjustments for non-represented employees, and these are summarized on this slide. The executive includes general wage adjustments, service increments, past year service increments for MCGO and IAFF members, additional longevity steps for MCGO and non-represented employees, and a salary schedule adjustment for IAFF members. All told, an employee's FY24 pay increase could range anywhere from 6.0% to 13.4%, with most employees receiving a cumulative increase in the 10% range. This next table shows that the pay adjustments recommended by the executive would have a combined FY24 cost of $61 million. And these numbers include both tax-supported and non-tax-supported funds. However, as many of the pay adjustments recommended by the executive would take effect in the middle or sometimes even near the end of the fiscal year, the annualized cost is much higher at $100 million. And this is the amount, the $100 million is the total that would roll over and become part of the FY25 base budget. Of note, while the annualized costs of the pension enhancements recommended by the executive are rather small, as shown in this table, based on what was submitted in the fiscal impact statements, the actuarial valuation that was done estimates annualized costs of $9.4 million per year combined for all the pension enhancements. And that amount is not included in the $100 million total shown in this table. Overall, the net impact of the pension enhancements is estimated to reduce the funded ratio of the pension plan by about 12%. And the GO committee will receive greater detail and information on all aspects of compensation and benefits this Friday, starting this Friday on April 14th. I'll turn it over to Ms. Mendy Singleton to talk about the racial equity and social justice.
Good morning, council members. So the Racial Equity and Social Justice Act requires the county executive to detail how each management initiative and each management program that would be funded in the annual budget provides or promotes racial equity and social justice. The executive is also required to develop tools to assist departments and decision makers determine how to look at the racial equity impacts before finalizing budget decisions. So one of the things that the county executive developed was the operating budget equity tool. The operating budget equity tool uses both departmental and program analysis and asks 7 questions. And the questions, I won't read them, but they're listed on page 13 of your packet. There are 3 department level questions and 4 program level questions, basically asking questions about how the departments or what the department's commitment is to racial equity and social justice, how they are or will be reducing or eliminating disparities, how they are or will be improving outcomes for communities of color and low-income communities. The answers that are being developed by the office have been developed by the departments and reviewed by the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, have both ratings from 0 to 4 stars, 0 to 3 stars actually, and then a justification. And you will see more of those ratings and justifications during your committee work sessions where the analysts will include those in their packets. And then finally, the GO committee work session, which is scheduled for later this month, there will be a more detailed discussion and review of how the county executive has incorporated racial equity and social justice into the FY24 budget. Mr. Howard?
Thank you. So these next group of slides will summarize how the executive's proposed budget aligns with the Council's adopted fiscal policies, many of which were put in place in response to the fiscal crisis during the Great Recession that we saw on the earlier slides. So first, with reserves, the good news is that the county is projected to end both FY23 and FY24 with reserves exceeding the 10% target, and the budget shows an 11.4% reserve projected at the end of FY24. In terms of one-time revenues, as Ms. Michelson mentioned, the executive uses about $128 million net in reserves, as well as uses one-time revenue from the ITOC recapture to help fund ongoing expenditures, and these funds will not be available in FY25. The Revenues Stabilization Fund, or RSF, is one of two components that make up reserves, and the executive does recommend this year a one-time deferral of the mandatory contribution to the RSF as required by the county code. This would not impact the total funding that's in the reserves, just the allocation of the reserves between what's in the RSF and what's in the undesignated reserves, and the RSF has more strict requirements upon use of those funds. And staff will work with the council president to schedule time for the council to review this issue in more detail going forward. You've already heard during the CIP update about PAYGO, and so I won't go into any more detail on that. For OPEB this year, the executive does recommend increased funding of about $2.7 million based on updated actuarial evaluations. The OPEB recommendation does not include a drawdown of trust assets for county government this year, but the executive also did not include additional pre-funding based on the GO Committee's preliminary policy recommendations related to an updated OPEB funding policy, and the committee will continue those discussions during these budget work sessions. The last policy item is compensation sustainability. And this is the Council's adopted policy stating that compensation costs for county government over time should grow at a similar rate to revenues. In FY24, the executive's budget increases compensation costs by 7.9% for county government, which is nearly 3 times higher than the projected FY24 to 29 annual revenue growth of 2.8% when you remove the projected tax increase for Montgomery County Public Schools, since that money would not be available to help fund county government programs and services. And my last slide before turning it back over to Ms. Michelson is to just give a little bit more detail on the potential FY25 structural deficit that was mentioned earlier. Even with the continuing revenue from the proposed 10-cent tax increase, the recommended fiscal plan estimates that there will be $37.8 million in additional funding available for agency uses in FY25. And that's for all agencies, county government, MCPS, Park and Planning, and Montgomery College. However, the executive's budget includes either known or likely FY25 expenditures of $183 million. The annualization of FY24 compensation enhancements and new positions is estimated to cost about $32.9 million in FY25. The MOE increase based on the new per pupil local contribution, if enrollment increases based on MCPS's projections, would add $21.6 million. And if you replaced all the use of one-time revenues in FY24 for ongoing expenditures, that's about $128.6 million. So all told, these potential expenditures already exceed projected resources by $145 million. Absent any changes, addressing this gap in FY25 would require spending reductions or revenue increases for that fiscal year.
So moving on to the approach for dealing with this operating budget, first a few key factors the council will need to consider as it goes through the budget. Obviously, there's a lot of support for MCPS, for the students, ensuring that they meet their educational needs, and also for the teachers who have also worked extremely hard over the last few years, and we want to make sure that they're compensated fairly. At the same time, the council has indicated its goals of trying to further discuss accountability and making sure that dollars that go to the school system are wisely used and achieve the objectives. You've already heard about the decrease in the recordation tax and its impact on the CIP, as well as the the fact that the executive did not shift the 80 million in OPEB. And there is a critical balance that the council will need to do between the CIP and the operating budget. They're very much linked, so it was useful that your update came right before this. To the extent that you decide to put more pay-go into the CIP, it means less dollars in the operating budget. And so as we continue through this process, we'll be looking to hear from you on where you fit on that balancing. We'll look very carefully at the executive's recommended 10% property increase to determine whether the council supports it, and if so, at what level, the 10% or something lower. And as part of this analysis, we'll be looking for opportunities for reductions, additional reductions. And another key issue will be the use of reserves for ongoing expenditures, and it's how the council wants to deal with the fact that this does not comply with the council's current fiscal policies, and obviously the growth in the county positions and the vacancy rate are going to be key. So in the council president's recommended approach, first, any increase over the FY23 budget recommended either by the executive or the committee will go on a reconciliation list. Traditionally in the past, the council has assumed the executive increases and made minor reductions, and then added council increases to a reconciliation list. This will put all additions on an equal footing, those submitted by the county executive as well as those submitted by council members. And then there will be a very careful review of all additions. The council president has recommended that every addition first be categorized as one-time or ongoing, so we can understand the long-term impact of that, and also as either a high priority, or to the extent that the council does not agree with something the executive has included in the budget, that does not have to be on the reconciliation list at all. We already know we've got a tough budget. Committees are asked to look for any reductions they can find that may help free resources for the council's priorities, or to help reduce the proposed tax increase. And then, as already noted, the GO committee will separately look at the compensation increases. And those fall into two components. First, we have the annualization of last year's increases. Those have already been agreed to. They are, for the most part, should be assumed in the budget. But the new increases that are recommended for this year are ones that the committee and the council will look carefully at to determine whether you support those increases. And with that, we'll stop and turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Michelson, and Mr. Howard and Ms. Singleton for that presentation. I want to pick up where you just ended in sharing additional thoughts on the memo that I provided, wrote to colleagues, that is contained in this packet. And it is a recognition of the grand scope that is in this $6.8 billion budget. And for us to best do our fiscal review, the best way to do so is by taking the FY23 budget, the current budget, and adding to it. Again, the Montgomery County Council is a very unique chartered branch of government in which we have final budgetary authority. And while this budget has been worked on by Ms. Bryant and the executive team for nearly a year, almost a year, we get a mere 5 weeks to review it. We could rewrite it if we wanted to. We don't have the time or the resources. And so the best way to go through this budget is to imprint our policies with ample conversation and input from our residents. And that is the process that I've outlined. Everything above the FY23 budget that we want will be added to the list. And that will be after serious consideration and review. That is our commitment not only to the residents and to the important services we provide, but also it is our commitment to taxpayer resources, which are equally as important. Two quick questions I have. One for council staff, but the executive team can answer this too. Our reserves, the 10% target that was established after the Great Recession is now a little higher than 14%. Is this the first time that we have met and or exceeded the 10% goal?
We've exceeded it before, but recently, but not by that much. So this is the most significant, measurable over the 10%.
And it would be the first time that we're drawing down using some of those surplus funds in that reserve.
No, I believe last year there were some
Last year we did
use
that too.
of the reserves as
Okay,
well.
thank you for that. The only other question I have at this point in time, I'll turn it, is for the executive team. And Ms. Bryant, good morning. Mr. Covey, Ms. Ward, thank you for joining us. The President Biden yesterday signed federal law that officially ended the COVID-19 national emergency. Whether one agrees with it or not, he has done that, and that there will be future actions taken by the federal government to wind down their policies. Here in Montgomery County, we received nearly $202 million thanks to President Biden and our federal partners, and that was used to keep our residents healthy and housed. And so within this budget, how many programs, or different way of thinking about it in terms of dollars, how much of our resources are being used to continue programs that we had received federal funds for during the COVID emergency?
Good morning, council members. Thank you for that question, Council President Glass. I don't have the dollar amount on the top of my head, but I know those monies represent programs that were stood up, of course, during the pandemic at a time where our residents were in need of those services and still are in need of those services, which is part of what's in the county executive's recommended budget. And some of those things represent food insecurity, they represent minority health programs, and other critical items that our communities have come to rely on. So it was the county executive's decision to put forth in the budget continuation of some of those programs to help and assist our residents to grow and thrive outside of the assistance of federal funds. But we can get back to you with an exact number.
I appreciate that, and there is no question about the important use of those funds and their stabilizing a force during COVID. The question that has been asked and that will continue to be asked is how much more are we able to do? And I think that's the budgetary question here. The need in our community is great. Our resources are finite, and it's the nexus and the meeting place of needs versus reality that we enter into this conversation. Mr. Howard?
Yes, I just wanted to add that in the FY24 budget, there's about $12.8 million and 6 positions that were entirely funded by ARPA last year, which have been switched over to general fund dollars. And embedded within that is the change from the decrease in the working families income supplement, the policy change. It was funded for $25 million last year. This year it's a little over $7 million based on the recommended change to the match to the state.
I appreciate that. I do see that on page 17 for those who are following. And so it is enumerated there, but I didn't know if there was more beyond the FTEs and just staffing in terms of services that are also provided through some of our grants or otherwise. But thank you, and we'll get a follow-up on that. I will turn to Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to staff. This is a very important conversation that we have as we embark on perhaps the most important conversation that we undertake each and every year on behalf of taxpayers and residents. It paints a very sobering picture, I will say, of this budget proposal that's before us, both the near-term fiscal consequences and the long-term sustainability. Oftentimes we're talking about what this could mean several years, many years down the road, and in fact this is an example where staff is suggesting that this could blow a hole in the budget starting as early as next year, $145 million, something that is extremely sobering. I do appreciate, Council President, the process that you have set forth when we're talking about a 10% property tax increase, any increase really on residents, but certainly one of the largest that we have seen. Everything should be on the table. Everything has to be scrutinized, and I appreciate that you set forth a process where we are going to do that. I think it's really important. So can you walk through the process a bit on how it works, but could you explain the votes, the decision points for colleagues? I think it's very important for everybody to understand, we're drastically exceeding the aggregate operating budget. That's a decision point that has a voting threshold. We have a property tax increase that is invoking the state's education article, which has a different voting threshold, a majority as opposed to a unanimous vote. We are not following the SAG guidelines in really any conceivable way as was approved, and that has certain ramifications. So could you just quickly walk through the votes and the decision points that colleagues are going to have to make as we move forward, so that everybody, including the public, can understand what's happening?
Yeah, I think you did a great job of summarizing there, Councilmember Friedson. But the one that you'll left out, which I'll add to it, is, or a couple. One is obviously you'll have to be voting on the CIP, and that is very much interrelated. You will be voting on any proposed revenue source, whether it be the proposed recordation tax increase, or the county executive's income tax increase. So those will be separate votes. And the way that we structure the voting is after you've gone through all of your work sessions, right at the end of the process on, I believe it's Wednesday the 16th, May 16th, you will vote on all revenues proposals, and then the following day vote on all expenditure proposals. And these will be straw votes. So we before we assume any revenues, we will make sure you do the votes on that. So that will happen first, and then subsequently it will be the straw votes on the expenditures and everything related to whether the council's prepared to exceed the aggregate operating budget, spending affordability, and what am I forgetting, Craig?
Yeah.
Councilmember Friedson, did I forget any?
The CIP includes the $80 million in PAYGO that the county executive decided not to do.
Absolutely.
So I just want to note, as you have stated, that we're, for the next a little over a month, we're going to review this budget as the council president has put forward, which I really appreciate. But no decisions that are actually going to dictate how we handle this budget, including tax increases, including our fiscal policies, including the spend affordability guidelines, including the aggregate operating budget, are going to happen the last week. There's 2 consecutive weeks basically, or the last 2 weeks. So it's not going to be until the middle of May for a budget that has to be approved by the end of May where those actual votes are going to take place.
Right, and let me just indicate, it's not as if we will be in the dark and not knowing what the council's intent is at that point. So for example, there will be work sessions on the recordation tax before the date at which you take final votes, and we will be looking for opportunities on all of these issues to get input from the council members and to understand where your positions are, so that we're not waiting until that last minute.
I appreciate that. I just want to know there's a difference between input and votes, and so I think it's important for everybody to understand that the actual votes, where everybody has to put forward where they are on different issues, doesn't happen until the very end of the process. And if it goes certain directions, that could dramatically change the final decisions that we make in a very tight timeline. So I just think that's important to note. Question for staff. Excluding the 10% property tax that is being proposed and dedicated to MCPS, does the growth in county government spending exceed the aggregate operating budget that the council approved with the spending affordability guidelines in February?
So the
the executive's budget is about, let's see, I have this, $363 million over the aggregate operating budget guideline that the council approved. So if you take out the $223 million from MCPS, you're still about $140 million over the AOB. That would include primarily county government. It would also include the increases for parking planning as well, but it would be mostly county government.
Almost an identical number to the structural increase for the following year at 145 million. Different numbers, but similar. So the central talking point of this budget is that this is a county budget and then a 10% property tax increase exclusively for MCPS. The reality is this is a dramatic increase in the budget across the board, some of which is funded through a 10% property tax increase that's dedicated to MCPS through the education article. Just important to note that that is different from how it is being presented, I think, to the public. And so I just wanted to note that. There are pension changes that have been proposed. There are legislative proposals that are before us for consideration as part of the collective bargaining agreement. I just wanted to check, and I know we're going to get deeper into the compensation and benefits at committee, which I look forward to, but I think it's important just to be aware as we head into that, while we have everybody here, was the Board of Investment Trustees part of that process or aware of those decisions?
No, the board looks at investments and how to maximize return on investments. It does not partake in any way in the discussion of benefits in that discussion. Of course, we need to know what the results are and what that means in terms of dollars coming into the pension fund, but it does not participate in the benefit discussion.
As the fiduciaries, they don't weigh in at all on the impact of policy decisions on the fund balance of the pension fund?
The issue is not so much the fund balance, but the return on the funds and making sure that the funds are growing at an appropriate rate. We leave to the policymakers, the council, decisions about what the benefits will be, and through the county's fiscal policies, determine what contribution should be to different funds and what the balances should be.
So we can get an understanding of what the impacts would be, but the Board of Investment Trustees is not going to formally weigh in. Like
No.
Bolton, for instance, could give us an actuarial analysis of what the impacts would be for our consideration and understanding, but the Board of Investment Trustees as a fiduciary is not going to weigh in on the impacts to the fund balance.
Now, again, the focus is on the
I just
growth.
want to make sure. I think that's something we might want to look into moving forward, but I appreciate that clarification. Okay, a couple more questions. For the executive branch, Ms. Bryant, Mr. Covey, and Ms. Ward, if you also want to weigh in, you're welcome to, although I'm not sure this is directed towards you. But there's a $14.8 million additional lapse assumption, which my understanding is it goes above and beyond what the standard lapse assumption is, lapse being the time at which we expect there to be a lapse between the beginning of the fiscal year and when it takes to hire a new position or to fill positions where somebody retires or leaves county service and we have to replace that person. We don't pay in the interim period. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. The $14.8 million, the additional lapse, and I was just hoping, could you explain that decision, particularly in light of the fact that we have 1,200 tax-supported vacancies, and we've added 454 new positions in this budget and the prior budget, whether there was any consideration of actually looking at vacancies rather than just adding a broad-based lapse, which seems to be, kind of a cheap fix from a fiscal standpoint.
On the lapse decision, the county executive was very conscious about the issues that we have surrounding filling positions and hiring. It is not unique to Montgomery County. It's something that governments across the country and even private industry partners are experiencing. So with that, he wanted to recognize the reality of our current hiring processes and where we are, and how we will get to a final point of filling some of these critical positions in county government. So his decision was to recognize that we won't fill everything in 1 year. There will be constant turnover at any given time, any given day, and he wanted to recognize that in the terms of its value, and when we can hire and when we have the actual the workforce partners, as in people who could be potential employees of county government, but really wanted to recognize the challenges that all governments are having in hiring positions, thus forth having an economic and a specific value within the budget.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's a tough message to send the public when we're asking for a 10% property tax increase, adding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new positions, and we have 1,200 vacancies that we haven't yet filled. So we're sending in this budget and in prior budgets a lot of conflicting signals to the public, which I think are tough. Okay, last question related to ITOC. I'm very concerned about the decision to use the income tax offset credit, both from a fiscal standpoint, to use one-time benefits for one-time money, necessarily to fund ongoing personnel expenses, but also the message that we're sending to the public, where we're literally spending their tax credit that we have offered them, that we have told them we're trying to get them to follow through on and make sure that they're eligible for, and help them out based on a change in state law. And instead, we're not only benefiting from it, we're spending it and causing an even deeper fiscal hole. At the same time, while then charging them, at least as proposed in this budget, a 10% property tax increase. So we're saying you're not going to get your ITOC, your $692 tax credit. We're going to charge you a 10% property tax increase to fund education, which most people, I think, many people support, which I get. And then we're going to spend the money that your credit would have meant to increase the size of the county budget, which is going to cause, we heard from council staff, potentially $145 million hole for next year. Could you just explain the thinking there of why we are spending this money instead of investing more money and reaching more people to make sure they get the credit that they deserve?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question, too. There's about 250,000 ITOCs every year, about 350,000 properties in Montgomery County. So about 250,000 of them are owner-occupied real property, residential real property, and they all get the $692 credit. The state passed a law that became effective in May of last year that ties our ITOC to the homestead tax credit. And as you noted, Mr. Friedson, we've been trying for a year now to get people to pay attention to this and to apply for the homestead credit so that they would be able to keep their ITOC. But looking at what's going on with it, I mean, this is just a math issue. It has nothing to do with, people being eligible or not per se. Of the 250,000, it's likely that about 5% of them are not entitled to the credit at this point, and so that the amount that was put in the budget for that would represent those properties that were no longer eligible for it. But since there was never an eligibility criteria before May of last year, we never could tell if somebody was eligible for it or not. So it's literally just looking at what is going on. When we started this a year ago, about 115,000 properties were getting the ITOC but had not applied for the homestead tax credit. So 115,000 a year ago. We sent a mailing out to all 115,000. We sent a letter actually to them a little less than a year ago from now. In the July tax bills, we put what is called a buck slip. It was a yellow piece of paper that spoke only to this particular issue and told people how to remediate, how to sign up for the homestead credit so that they wouldn't lose their ITOC.
I appreciate all the work that you have done. I know that there's a lot more work to do. I just want to confirm the one point, and then I'll yield back to colleagues. are you suggesting, which is different from how it's been presented to us, and I just want to glean on this one point because it's essential to my view of this item, and I'm sure other colleagues have other views on this as well. The $13.8 million in the ITOC that is baked into the budget, that is merely the difference of those who are eligible and the change in understanding who's eligible and who's not eligible based on their primary residence, and not in any way on funds that would have been dedicated to people who are eligible who haven't yet applied through the state requirement?
Right, that's right. It's our estimate of the portion of property owners that would no longer be eligible. In other words, when they pass that state law, people who are not going to file for the homestead credit because the house is not their principal residence and they don't live
what's
in it.
the assumption of the revenue impact of those who are eligible but haven't applied? There's 80,000. There were at least, a couple weeks ago, 80,000. Started at 115, dropped to 80,000. Yeah. What's the revenue estimate of that? And if you don't have it, you can provide it for us later.
Do it later.
And could we get council staff to confirm that point? Because that's a fundamental difference. If we're just refining our numbers based on new information, that's one thing. If we're spending money of residents' tax credits that they haven't, redeemed, that is a totally different story that I'm deeply uncomfortable with. So I'd like to get that information.
At this point, it was our understanding that we don't know of those who have, have not yet filed. We don't know what portion are not eligible versus what portion have not yet requested it. So we'll be eager
It sounds
to
like the
work
Department of Finance and council staff can work
yes.
on this and report back either the GEO committee or the full council so we can understand this, because it is a very, very important point from my perspective. And with that, thank you to everybody, and I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Vice President Friedson, for touching on things like the ITOC, which are a one-time expenditure. Again, this has been an ongoing issue throughout this budget, and I appreciate the discussion about the ARPA funds that were used for certain things. But, when we have the county executive proposing a budget like this and then recognizing that these are coming from one-time funding sources, and as soon as it drops saying, I'm happy to work with you all, though, County Council, on figuring this out, it ends up putting us in the negative position, right? I'm the mom who said no. I become that person because I have to, because someone has to be the person who takes a hard look at this, even if the dad says, we can do everything, and you have to say, sorry, no, we can't. We're not going to Disney this year. We can't afford it, right? That being said, there are non-lapsing funds that the county would have received from either the federal government or the state for different projects. Is that right? During the COVID period.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Lukey. If you can make a clarification for when you say non-occurring funds.
Non-lapsing, meaning some funds come and you have to use it or lose it within a fiscal year and others do not. And it was my understanding that the COVID relief type funds were non-lapsing, meaning they were allocated to the state, then subsequently from the state to local governments, and that they don't expire. So you have them until they run out. Is that right?
I'll let Deputy Josh Waters answer that question, but I understand the question now.
Sure.
Better, thank you.
Hi. So, pardon my voice. The county received $183 million from the CRF in the CARES Act. In terms of when we had to spend it by December 31st last year.
Okay.
This year, it's running together. The county's also received $204 million in ARPA funds. Directly from the federal government. We have until next calendar year to spend those dollars. Although I will say I think all of them have been allocated or spent, and I think the council staff gave an update on that a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so right now the different pieces that need to be funded, there were things that were funded with that are ongoing rather than one time. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, there were certain programs that were continued. The executive recommended continuing in this budget. Using county funds, including $3 million to continue the hubs that are throughout the county government, throughout the county. It's about $7 million to continue a revised portion of the Working Families Income Supplement program. And this is in addition to the decisions that the executive and council made in fiscal 23 to continue fiscal 22 programs funded with ARPA on an ongoing basis. And that included some rental assistance, that included some other homelessness programs. And so those types of things were continued in 22 and 23, and those are also continued in 24.
Right, so there were prior decisions made that ended up leaving us with the deficit that we now have for fiscal year 24, and then in the proposed budget, and then of course it extended into fiscal year 25. And these are either one-time funds or wholly reliant on every tax increase possible and proposed passing, along with taking from one-time funding sources. Is that right?
Well, it's just about prioritization and what the council and executive want to prioritize in their budget moving forward. So every year we come back and we do a budget. And so while we are projecting, yes, a structural deficit in the out years, every year the council and executive, they have to propose a budget where resources match expenditures.
Right, but you know, and I get that. Like, there are a lot of things that are really great programmatically to do, and you know, there are a lot of things that are true needs, not needs versus wants, but really actually needs, but that we are facing not being able to fund appropriately without placing the county in an incredibly bad posture fiscally. And that's where I have the concern. I understand that, you know, the hiring challenges and processes, and certainly we're taking a deep dive look at that and what that means in terms of personnel. And I know that there hasn't been a deep look at the different positions that are already there and how they may be reclassified or restructured to meet the needs of the current county government versus, you know, what it looked like 20 years ago where we've added on things. And that requires a lot of structural overhaul in order to really get a sense of where we are now. And that hasn't happened yet. And I know that's something that Tracy Anderson is deeply interested in doing now that she's come on board. But we're not there yet because that takes a lot of time in order to sort out. But I have a great deal of concern about the fact that we're being asked to bless a budget that not only bloats extensively above and beyond what we could afford to do without using one-time funds, but also tees us up for fiscal year 25 having that $145 million deficit. And I wanted to know what your plans are for how we make up that $145 million deficit that's going to be coming right on our heels as soon as the ink dries and everyone goes home from this year's budget session.
The county executive views the use of revenues that exceed our policy target for reserves as a bridge. We are, the Department of Finance, along with our actuarial partners, are predicting a mild recession at the end of this fiscal year. This bridge is in place to continue those services that county residents see as vital and need to actually emerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic experience. And within that bridge, there will be some decisions that have to be made next year. As Deputy Waters said, this is an annual process. It's an annual process where decisions are made and there are trade-offs that have to be considered. And this will certainly be some of the things that the county executive will have to consider in his next budget, because if this is considered a bridge, it's either we're going to have our revenues are going to outperform again, or tough decisions will have to be made. So I think that's the context in which the county executive viewed putting forth a budget that makes use of these excess resources, or reserves, shall we say.
Okay, thank you. Well, I yield back, Mr. President. And you didn't need to apologize for your voice, because heaven knows mine's not great right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the memo that you drafted to guide how we're going to approach the budget. You know, I found it very helpful given that a majority of the council is new, and so I wanted to thank you, and also want to thank our incredible staff for also providing us with an overview of the challenges that we're going to have to face in reviewing this budget. It's going to be very interesting this season. I did send a memo earlier asking a few questions, and hopefully I can receive those responses as well to incorporate them into the decision-making process. But I wanted to ask a few follow-up questions today. Dawn just asked about, Councilmember Lutke just asked about the county executive's potential vision for how we're going to make up this funding in the future deficits, and wanted to know if there's any vision for how we're going to expand the tax base, any work with the counties, with the Economic Development Corporation to make this happen. Is there anything that you want to share, or?
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Sales. I believe the county executive's push, one of the pushes, is that he recognizes the strain that the pandemic has had on K-12 learning. And this budget makes record investments in the school system, including funds to retain the best educators that we can, and to compensate them fairly in a highly competitive labor market. As we all know, Montgomery County schools have been amongst the best in the state for quite some time. Without significant investment in those schools, I think it will be difficult for the county to attract business partners who are interested in this region. Our school systems become an anchor for businesses wanting to relocate here, for their employees wanting to live, work, play, and learn in this environment. So I think part of the response to this budget is the significant investment that he's recommending for our school system. There are some resources allocated to the business team to help strengthen support them in strengthening their relationships with businesses throughout the county, and not just large entities, but smaller businesses as well. All of this comes and culminates to a practice to help us grow. The investment that he's recommended in expanding educational opportunities, higher educational opportunities in the East County, all are components that will lead to businesses being interested in being here, quite frankly.
Thank you. I had another question. Sure. Are there, I'm trying to understand how this is being laid out, and so, seeing that we are looking at a budget with a deficit that was recommended, do the agencies and departments get revenue projections before putting together their own budget recommendations?
Yeah, Councilmember Sales, I just want to correct that there's not a deficit this year, so there's no misunderstanding. It is what we project for next year based on, some of the cost elements, use of one-time revenues, costs that we've assumed. And I'll let OMB address whether departments are given revenue numbers. I believe they're just asked for what their needs are, and OMB is the department that's reconciling the revenues and the expenditures. But
I'm sorry, there is a deficit. That's why we're proposing a 10% tax increase and the recordation potential. So it just seems like a consistent cycle of.
We do, in our request to departments for their proposals, ask for what their expenditure pressures are. And what they look like. If they are a department that is revenue generating, we work with them on their estimates of their revenues. But as far as overall county revenues are concerned, departments are briefed at certain times in the year on either based on a presentation to the county council and what the revenue picture looks like, and or sharing information on what we've been receiving from the state government and trying to keep them abreast of the challenges that the county executive will have in making those decisions that they've requested in their budget based on the revenues available.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, the county executive recommended a budget with the tax increase. And I would agree with Ms. Michelson that the budget as presented does not have a deficit for FY24. It would have a deficit if a tax increase wasn't proposed. You're right about that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. One other question. Will we be shown the operating budget equity tool referred to by the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice and how it was used to prepare the budget?
So I'll let Ms. Ward answer that, but yes, you will be. During the work sessions, each department, when they are presented, the analyst will present the ORESJ ranking as well as the justification, and any indications or additional comments that the analysts have will also be shared at that time.
Okay.
There is a link to the operating budget equity tool on page 13 of the staff report, and I'm also happy to discuss that further with you or any council member, but I'll let Ms. Ward answer further.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just going to reiterate what Ms. Mundy said. Yeah, you can see the tool anytime. We are actually very proud of it. We'd love for you all to ask many questions about it. Really excited to present on the 24th, both about the answers and responses from departments, but more so about our analysis and where we think this is going and how we can continue to use it for budget decisions now and down the road.
Okay. And so I asked a question about the county executive's vision for increasing revenue. You talked about MCPS and the importance of MCPS. And I know that negotiations are ongoing. They've yet to be concluded. I see that MCPS has a placeholder of $201 million for compensation increases and $46 million for new initiatives. A 10% increase in property taxes would only net $223 million. Will all of it be dedicated to MCPS funding or just for compensation?
It is the proposed 10-cent property tax increase will be allocated 100% to MCPS for their compensation packages, their learning enhancements. Per state law, the revenue generated from that tax has to go to the school system.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I want to first say thank you to the staff, the council staff, and the county's exec staff for your work on this. I know it takes an awful lot to put this together, and for the presentation today. And I want to thank the council president for outlining how we will be working together to move this forward. First, I do want to invite my colleagues to the Government Operations Committee meetings that are coming up. Please come. Yes, I know you'll be there. I'm looking forward, Ms. Ward, for you joining us on the 24th. But as we said, we're working hard starting Friday on the compensation and benefits, and we'll be continuing. So please join us. I don't want to belabor some points that my colleagues have already made, but I want to just underscore a couple of things. The first is, and I know county staff has already started looking at this, but is the issue of the vacancies, as we talked about. And I want to be careful, and I know you are, as we talk about these vacancies, because just saying like, oh, we have 1,200 vacancies, and we want to add some, even if we just cut the vacancies, doesn't get us to closing the gap we're looking at here. And there are assumptions built into department budgets and our budgets, like we talked about before, about lapses. So I think being able to dig into those more as we move forward is going to be very important to us, and understanding it's a lot more complex than it may look at first, but I do think it's important to look at where these vacancies are, how long they've been vacant, and in what departments we are seeing vacancies. We do know in some of our very key departments that we've all been talking about as a council, needing to make sure that we fill vacancies in our mental health areas, our police department, and other things, that these are very important. So just wanted to underscore that and look forward to digging into that. The other thing, as my colleagues have talked about, when I look at the operating budget, I will say the thing that does very much concern me is the use of one-time funds. And I am very disappointed that the county exec did not take the recommendation to put more money into PAYGO. Because for me, when we're looking at the increases in inflation and the increase in some of our projects in the CIP, this is a perfect example of what we should be putting in our one-time funds. Director Bryant, you talked about a bridge, and I guess if we could if you could talk about that a little bit more, because my concern with seeing the use of reserves and these one-time fund as a bridge is a bridge to where? Because the economic outlook isn't good, and when we talk about structural deficits, what we're really talking about is a deficit that even if the economy was to rebound, we're still seeing that deficit. So I'd like to understand a little bit better where the county executive is coming from when he thinks of this use of one-time funds as a bridge. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Stewart. When the county executive's ideology of a bridge is that there will be some rebound of the economy. The recession, the mild recession that the county is projecting at the end of this year, we're projecting as mild, not something to last for an extenuated period of time, but something that is a little bit more brief and shallow in its existence. So he sees this as a bridge to carry us over into the next fiscal year. And as I stated before, budgets are yearly processes, and they are annual. It is an annual process in which everything is examined and looked at every year. So if that is a notion that turns out not to be true, there will be further discussions in the upcoming budget year, what to do with some of the things that the county executive has recommended in this budget that represents the use of those one-time excess revenues. So there's an opportunity next year, if that does not come to fruition, to have those conversations. But I believe the county executive is strong in his notion that this will not be something that will be pervasive and last for a longer period of time.
Great, thank you for that clarification. The county exec and I might just have a different view on that point, and we'll talk about that more over the next few weeks. The other place, and it hasn't been brought up, I'm going to bring it up because I feel like as chair of government operations I need to, which is OPEB. Not a lot of people talk about OPEB, but the funding of it really is something we have to do, and it's something that I see as an investment in the short term for our long term benefit. And if we're really disciplined and good fiscal stewards of it in the short term, it provides us benefits in the long term. And I think that's some of the tension we always have with budgets, is looking at what do we need to fund in the short term to meet immediate needs, but also what are the investments we need to make in the long term to set us up to be good fiscal stewards. So just want to put it out there. I know government operations will be talking about it more as well. But again, I just want to thank everyone very much for your work on this, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, and we will try to attend that government operations work session. Next is Councilmember Balcom.
Sure, thank you. So I really appreciate Councilmember Lutke's analogy of that this budget leaves it to the moms to make the tough decisions. We're in luck because we have a lot of moms here. So I think we're good. This is a really difficult budget, and it not only requires significant multiple tax increases, but it sets up this structural deficit for next year. And I'm just not comfortable pushing these decisions off to next year of how we're going to cover this budget, next year's budget next year. We need to make these tough decisions now, this year, instead of deciding how we're going to pay for next year's budget next year. And one good example, we don't need to talk about it now, but we as a body need to talk about it. It's the timing of the pay adjustments. Referenced on page 12. It's much easier to increase pay for 2024 for a given budget when we only have to cover half of it or a portion of that. But it really, making personnel decisions are tough to pull back, and I think that we need to look at that and not kick the can down the road. And that's just one example. I think everybody's mentioned the issue of one-time revenue, using one-time revenue for operating. I think that just sets up just a disaster down the road. I just have a couple questions. I thank you, Councilmember Friedson, to talk, referencing the ITOC. I think that's a good example of the one-time revenue. But I really, and this is a subject that I've raised many times, is that my guess is that we're not reaching the most vulnerable population that could use this $692. So I really want to be able to see where we are in terms of how many people we haven't reached and make sure that we understand this money. And then I think, Mr. Howard, you referenced the investment income and the revenue stabilization fund and how we're not allowed to use that revenue. And are we going to talk about that in the future?
Yes, we will schedule a follow-up work session to talk about that in more detail. And just to clarify, the Revenue Stabilization Fund just has different requirements about when those funds can be accessed, as opposed to undesignated reserves, which can be used for, during the year if the council or executive feel that there's a need to spend additional funds. The projected amount in the Revenue Stabilization Fund at the end of FY24 would be 10%, which would meet the entire 10% reserve target. So that's kind of a new phenomenon that the county is reaching, where it was not initially envisioned when this fund was set up that it would hold the entire 10% reserve. And so that's kind of why there's this discussion of how to handle the potential mandatory contribution this year. So we'll have those follow-up discussions to get into a lot more detail on that.
Great, thanks. And then just a final question. This is in the weeds, sorry. The page 11, the table 7. So can we pull out, I'd like to know more about the past year increments, and in that table it kind of lumps the service increments, past year service, salary schedule adjustments. Can you pull that out for us at some point?
In the GEO Committee staff report, which will be published later today for Friday, will include all that and more. So after looking at that report, we're happy to follow up on any additional details you want, but we'll have a much more detailed breakdown of all those different components.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning. And thanks again. I want to echo colleagues. Thanks for all the work. This is never easy. It's one of the reasons when we were trying to restructure the council, I was like, we need to have more dedicated time to go over the budget at the council. It's we have to figure that out. I still think we need to figure that out. It's a Herculean task that our staff does in a very short period of time. But I don't think I can say as one council member, it's difficult to go over this with the level of specificity that I think we all would like, and all the other demands during the year under the current council schedule. So I'll just put that out there again. But we have what we have, and we have some important decisions to make. The question around ITOC, I'll start with that because that's quick. I agree. I'd like to know. I had assumed it was what you said. I didn't think we were hoping people wouldn't apply and then spending that money. That would be very wrong. I received a little slip in the mail and all that, it's being a homeowner, a new home, different homeowner in the last 2 years to apply and all that. So I saw when that came out. So please get back to us on that. The property tax going to schools, this was mentioned before, it still doesn't meet the school's request. I think that's important to just put out there. Even at 10%, it is still 20-something million, I think, short of the schools. What is it, Mr. Howard?
7 million less than the schools.
I'm sorry, 7 million.
Yes. Okay.
Because it's 220. Just do the numbers for me real quick. I don't have it in front of me.
Their increase in their requested increased local contribution was closer to $230 million increase, whereas this would provide a $223 million
right,
increase. 223
versus 230. Got it. So you still have the 7 million increase, and obviously and then of that increase, what was the compensation number?
So in the board's budget, there's a $201 million placeholder for compensation increases.
Right.
So that's just kind of one of the general big components they have.
Right. So 200 million or so is for compensation. The other monies are for programs or enhancements like math and reading and other programs to address some of the challenges. They're negotiating, they're doing their negotiation process. We send them the money, they decide how they're going to use it. That could create, depending on what we do, a renegotiation process or things that have happened in the past. But I think that's important. The other question I had, the increase in the county government portion, because the two biggest increases obviously are the schools and then the county government increase. How much of that is compensation? I know you went over it, but just want to pull it out.
Yeah, so in tax-supported funds only, about 90 million of the 169.5 million is due to compensation from annualization of FY23 compensation plus new FY24 compensation adjustments.
Right, okay. So 200 million plus 90 million, 290 million of the increase this year between MCPS and county government is for compensation increases. Realizing that the inflation hits everybody, and our teachers, our county government workers who are providing critical services, they're being hit as well and need to provide for themselves. And we constantly hear, I'm doing these school tours. My several colleagues have joined us. We hear it in county government and HHS and other places. People are burned out. Part of the reason for the vacancy rate is because people are retiring and people are burned out, and compensation hasn't kept up in some instances in our school system. That was we are no longer the highest paying school system. And so that's something that that's a structural issue of how do we provide the services that our county and our residents have come to expect. Compensation is a huge part of that. And so there's not a ton of new programs. So when we say we're going to list the items on the reconciliation list, I'm assuming that part of that will say, and this is to our staff, this is compensation increase, and how are you planning on breaking that out? Because that's a lot of the money.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the FY23 compensation annualization costs, those are already baked in. Those were for past decisions, so those will not be part of the reconciliation list, and that's spelled out in the Council President's memo. The FY24 compensation adjustments will be dealt with separately by the GO committee and then the council's typical process of reviewing compensation. So those will be dealt with separately as well. It's kind of similar to how it was done during the COVID year, the base budget year, where the compensation proceeded on a separate track. So the things that will be put on the reconciliation list were all the different increases in programs, services, operational costs, things like that are outside of the compensation pieces.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. That's helpful. And I just wanted to ask our executive, this point of the bridge, the vacancy issue. I was lead for libraries. I passed it happily and reluctantly to Councilmember Menk. That was a huge issue a year ago. We've made great progress on the vacancies in the library department. The analysis of where and why the vacancies are occurring is really important to the work this year and next year. You know, I personally think the idea of you have the needs that are here. People need food assistance right now. People need rent assistance right now. People need a lot of the things that are covered in the operating budget right now. So the bridge analogy, I understand, but it has to be in combination to an analysis of the vacancies. And I understand the county executive's point that he's made before, and I want to allow you all to speak to this and commit and let me know what's going on right now about this, to say that, well, we were hit with the pandemic, so we couldn't deal with the restructuring of government. I think that's a fair point, but where are we now? And what's the plan and the timeline for the analysis of these vacancies so that we can make a better decision going forward throughout the rest of this year, through this budget process, obviously in the next 6 weeks, but going forward?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Joando. The county executive has expressed to county leadership his desire to take a look at restructuring government, and that includes vacant positions. There is not yet a timeline on it. We are starting discussions about this in about a week. There may be some other resources needed to facilitate the restructuring component, but the examination of vacant positions based on what we were able to achieve with those positions vacant, and based on what we're hearing from department leadership, will be a task that we will have to undertake. We OMB have looked at vacant positions over the last couple of years, but I think there is a certain level of buy-in that the county executive is looking for from the leadership that has been appointed to manage these services on how to best go forward with this. And in a lot of instances, the county has been able to keep the same service levels, but that's come at other cost. Departments are using monies from those vacancies to hire contractual services, which in some instances are more expensive. So there is great interest in shoring up some of these services. Social workers, nurses, police and correctional officers are all fields that are really suffering from the labor shortage. So he is interested in that. He has expressed his interest in doing something, and we as a government are starting those conversations and how best to move forward. And it's not something that we're looking to study to death. It is something we are looking to be intentional about and to implement. So hopefully we can come back with some information on how that will progress moving forward. But we do have some work to do, and recognize that.
I appreciate that, and I know we all will be waiting with bated breath to engage with you on that. Last point I want to make is the racial equity tool. I think in the context that has been set here today, it has never been more important to use that tool in the decisions we make over the next 2 months. And so I'll allow you to say something, Ms. Ward, and I just think, we passed this law. It was one of the first things the new council did. I was very proud to have worked on that, and to be at a point now where we actually are able to use this tool, and the agencies have thought about it in their submissions, because part of building that bridge is realizing a lot of people are suffering still, and the cost of everything has gone up, and to provide the level of services that we need to provide, using that racial equity tool is going to be really, really important. So my two takeaways here are, and I'll allow you to comment, most of this is to have staff that are paid well so they can do a job for our residents. That's critically important, whether it's our teachers or our county government employees. And we have folks that are hurting right now that need help so that they can get to that better economic place and kind of ride out what is hopefully a mild recession, and as costs the increase of costs starts to continue to slow, can get through it, and we can be in a different place next year. I think that analogy of a bridge is important, but part of that bridge is building a bridge that's racially equitable and socially just. So that'll be my last question if you have a point.
Not a point, just agreeing with you that it is absolutely essential. We worked with Jennifer Bryant and Deputy Director Waters to talk about how we were going to shore up many of our safety net programs that disproportionately impact Black and brown people, why it was really essential to keep some of those programs despite the cost. I'll say upfront cost, because there's also a backdoor cost if you do not keep up those programs. You know, you pay on the front end or you pay on the back end. And the notion that they are too expensive on the front end says that you want to defer the pain down the road, both for us and those families. But it will definitely, there will be pain. And so we wanted to make sure that we made clear our voice in the budget equity process, in the budget process, particularly when it comes to how equitable some of these decisions should be. So yeah, we worked really hard with the with our budget staff to make sure that there was a lens on our operating budget and our CIP budget process. So
thank you, and I appreciate all the work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Jawando, and I appreciate the comments that you made at the beginning of your statement about the work that we do, the importance of this, and continuing to refine our processes. I'll remind colleagues, especially those that are new, that a number of years ago I made the recommendation that we have semi-annual budget review. That was particularly during the height of the pandemic, when we did not meet in person, but there was a lot of money flowing through the county to provide support for our residents, and this is a format that other jurisdictions take into account. So here we are in April and May reviewing the budget, and I would like to engage further about 6 months into the future, getting updates to see how the hiring has gone, to see how the program implementation is taking shape, so that for the next budget cycle we don't start from scratch in this in a way that we somewhat am right now. With that, turn it over to Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments from colleagues, appreciate all the hard work as always, and hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's often a moniker we use. We used it a heck of a lot during COVID, and we try to use it every time we prepare a budget. And we're certainly hoping for the best in this budget, but I think the jury's out on whether we truly are preparing for the worst, because I think all of us hope that the recession that many people are predicting and have been for quite some time will be mild. But when you look at some of the other factors that are so beyond our control, or frankly that of our country, international unrest, a presidential cycle that unfortunately will be every bit as toxic and maybe more so than the one that we faced just a couple of years ago. And I am not as optimistic about what we see before us, because all of the signs are flashing red in what is looming. And I've said this many times, and I will say it many more times. I was there through the last reduction in force process we had in Montgomery County government. And I remind everyone that the county's policy is that the last people hired, if there is a reduction in force process, are the first people to be let go. And that we learned the very difficult way at the department level, which is why I know this lapse two-step game. I played it on both sides. As a department head, you fight so hard for these positions, and you know that they're not going to be budgeted, but the thought of starting the process all over again to hire those positions which are needed is a difficult one, and one that's hard for departments to absorb, because that work doesn't go away. It's being absorbed by somebody else. And that's when grievances are filed, because people are worked out of their classifications. And the data points that we have to not lose sight of are that the need has not gone away. It has grown in the last 5 years. The opioid epidemic, the challenges that we're seeing in mental health among the most vulnerable populations across generations are all still there. And so it will be, as it always is, a tough budget to go through. This one has its own unique set of needs and circumstances, as they all do. But we have to look at this through a holistic lens. And I agree with the Council President just now in the semi-annual review, but in addition to that, there was a time at the beginning of this administration which we were actively looking at a biannual budget to give the council more time and this was when county stat was absorbed into OMB, so that we could better track outcomes of program services, particular line items, and that hasn't really come to fruition. And now more than ever, especially given the structure that we're going to go through this budget process, we do need to see those outcomes. We do need to see the success rate of programs and the impact they're having on a community and on the residents that they're trying to serve. So I'm actually very anxious. I agree in principle with the process that the council is taking this year in adding everything new to the reconciliation list. But in a good year, the reconciliation list is a tough process to go through because so many things are added. And another data point that we need to not lose sight of, that we're hearing, all of us, we're getting calls from nonprofit organizations, community organizations who are asking for more than what has been proposed. Because in some instances, they received, whether it be through a foundation or some other entity besides the county, federal funding in another form that has also been exhausted. But the need hasn't gone away. So we have to bear that in mind as we go through that process and not just look at what's directly in front of us, but peripherally, the other programs that are impacting our residents that we're helping to fund, not 100%, but a significant portion of. So HHS, my colleagues, we have our work cut out for us because more than 2/3 of the lapsed positions are in HHS, along with the public safety divisions. And the need, as we know, has continued to grow. So determining what is high priority versus priority will be especially difficult this year, given what we are seeing on the ground and the reports that we're getting from folks that are on the ground. But I just wanted to make 2 points, and Councilmember Jawando, again, it's good that we went back to back because I agree with a lot of the points that he made. And this is a very generous compensation package, but frankly it needs to be, given where we've been and what our staff have gone through and personnel have gone through in order to retain the excellent quality public servants that we have here in Montgomery County. But we also have to acknowledge this is it. I mean, there cannot be another significant increase, if there is going to be one, which in some cases are double digits, for the foreseeable future. And when we do meet in committee, it would be helpful as we diagnose the lapsed positions, the vacant positions, to see where we compare, and I think GO will do this, as they always do, with our salary and compensation. We've done it with our schools. I've been in the Education and Culture Committee sessions where, one of the understandable, justifiable reasons for the increase is to remain competitive. We've also done that extensively in the public safety divisions. But I'd be curious as to where we are with social workers, with nurses, with those other frontline key positions, and how our salaries match up regionally. Because what we're hearing from nonprofits is they're losing a lot of their staff to county government. They're coming to work for us because our salary and compensation is higher than it is in the nonprofit sector. So there are a lot of moving parts here that will be difficult for us to process and meet. But I do look forward as we dive deeper into the committee sessions, but I'm also anxious about how realistically we are going to facilitate that reconciliation process. And so I will have subsequent questions internally to our team on what that will look like. And we have 5 new committee chairs this year. And we are fortunate to have 6 outstanding and extraordinary new members of this body that have more than hit the ground running. But we also have a lot of new staff members as well. And so there is a lot of new this year that's good, that allows us to see things from a different perspective, but doesn't give us a lot of time to be able to process in what is already too much of a condensed time frame to begin with. So it's going to be tough, but we'll get through it. We always do. So I guess my 2 questions for now, Ms. Bryan, and you don't have to answer now, but in preparation for the upcoming committee sessions, can you just describe globally what are the metrics or what evaluation has the administration done systemically to look at these lapsed positions and determining which to keep, which to hang on to, Are there overarching benchmarks that you have utilized, whether it be through county stat or some other means? What was the justification for those lapsed positions at a higher level? Or was it sort of a case-by-case basis?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Arbanaz. It was on a case-by-case basis, but the overarching directions to county departments were positions vacant less than 360 days, which is a year, and positions that were vacant more than a year. And we did find some instances where positions had been vacant for a longer term. And in a lot of instances, leadership, department leadership, they definitely pointed to the pandemic as part of the reason why some of their positions were still vacant for longer periods of time. There was more focus on delivering services and how to best deliver those services than focusing on the vacancies that they had, which can, as Councilmember Joando alluded to, lead to burnout of our current and existing staff, which is why the county executive has negotiated in good faith compensation increases with our labor partners, because we do want to make sure that we're taking care of our current workforce, recognizing that our workforce is maturing, they are available for retirement. And some people during the pandemic have chosen to retire and move on and do other things. I think people recognizing that something of this magnitude could affect them and or their families has led people to different decisions. Some people have gone to jurisdictions and to functions that are paying more than Montgomery County. We are not, in some instances, the top employer as far as salary and benefits are concerned. We no longer, most county employees don't have a defined benefit contribution. So all of these factors become very important when we are in recruitment and retention mode. So we did ask about these positions, but like I said, a lot of the feedback from county directors were these are positions that are needed. We didn't have time to conduct, the myriad of interviews and the recruitment process, so they backfill those positions with either contractors or overtime. So coming out of the pandemic, I know directors are taking a hard look at what they've been doing, what they've been able to do, where they've had to shore up services with other means, to make a value judgment on whether or not these positions are still needed. They were able to do something. The question is, what is the something? OMB has also started the process of program evaluation, with county staff being one of our major divisions in the department, and we are starting to look at programs, ask questions on metrics, and collecting that data to start informing the process. So we are making movement on that. We're starting with one of the very highly visible areas, which is affordable housing. And then we will move into other programs as they represent portions and layers of dollars invested in the budget. So we have started that process and hoping to be able to move that forward this year.
I appreciate that. Just two final points. In addition to level setting expectations, as Councilmember Lukey mentioned during the CIP conversation, I appreciate Councilmember Sales lifting up and requesting more information on what the comprehensive plan is to raise our tax and revenue base. Because if we are going to be telling our residents that they could have as much as a 10% increase in what's been proposed, without any sort of plan to offset some of the increases in needs that we are having, then we're asking for huge trouble. And again, I lived when our constituents were very upset and angry with county government and took it out on our frontline workforce in many ways. That will happen again, and that frustration will reemerge if we don't have a comprehensive plan. And similarly, we need a plan for succession at personnel and staff levels, because and I know I've spoken to Ms. Anderson about this, she's working on it, but we also need a defined plan on how we're going to recruit and retain the best and the brightest into public service moving forward, because we've all benefited from the previous generations of people willing to serve, and we got to keep that going. And this, salary and compensation is part of that, but there's more to it than that.
Yes, just to piggyback on the point you made about recruitment and retention, the executive has made recommendations for strengthening the human resource department to be able to facilitate all of those things. We have out-of-date compensation and classifications that need a real boost in getting us in the right place to make sure we're hiring folks who can have the skills to do the jobs that we need done for our residents. So there are some investments that the county executive has recommended in the human resource department, because quite frankly, if our human resources as a central service department is not strengthened, then we will fail. And we are destined to fail. So we have to make sure that there is appropriate resources to make sure that we can move the whole entire county workforce further, and that it is an equitable workforce, and that it looks like the residents that we serve. So that is a tough mission, but we're hoping that we can make greater strides. We've of course had some successes in the hiring of librarians and services to support library services, employees to support library services. We've had some successes in hiring an OMB, and we're sharing that with all of our department partners to let them know how we came upon these successes, and hopefully some of that will translate over. But we as a government are destined to fail if we don't strengthen the role of human resources.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I yield back to you, Mr. President. Look forward to the committee conversations.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to thank our staff and you, Mr. President, for working through this very difficult budget and budget process. I've done many budgets over my lifetime, and every one of them, I think that we've started out by saying, this is the worst budget I've ever dealt with. I could actually pass a lie detector test this year. And I want to say that I want to thank our staff for being so informative, and how impressive it is, candidly, that I know many have asked questions about a specific number, and off the top of your heads you've actually said, well, let me tell you what this one is. Now, nobody checked whether you were right or not. No, I'm kidding you. But it's very impressive. It really is. And I certainly appreciate my colleagues discussing their concerns as well. I believe many have heard me say that I have said, regardless of the dollar amount, this year being $6.8 billion, that it's a lot of money until you spend it. It just doesn't seem to be enough, and we have so much more need, and we certainly don't have as much money as we do need. And Sally will tell you, my wife Sally will tell you, that it's always been very comforting to me to say I'm fine with it, but you got to ask your mother. But I believe that beyond me kicking the can down the road, Dawn, I believe that's also a recognition that partners need to work together. And I think that's important too. Not that Sally always thanked me for that, but I am very concerned about using one-time funds for things other than one-time issues. You just can't do it that way. And yes, I do believe the economy is going to change. It has in the past, and it's going to rebound, and of course it's going to reseed again, but we just don't know when. And we can't spend money that we don't have. I was part of the, whatever you want to call it, zero-based, same service budget as the prior year, and the council did it, and we were concerned, we were worried, because of uncertainty, we didn't have funds for increases for our hardworking employees. We were concerned that we did not want to have any layoffs or furloughs. We worked through that. But what we did when we were working through that is we allowed our competitors to go forward, and we didn't. And that's part of the reason that we're having so much problems hiring people to do the services that we all need and require. So I believe that it's that we need to make certain that our employees need to be properly compensated, and we don't have greater difficulty attracting and retaining our very best employees to do the services our residents deserve and desire. I do have a question, and on the general wage compensation number that you had, did that include vacancies that are current vacant? Does that number include if we hired all those people that are currently vacant?
I'll ask OMB to jump in for specifics, but that number is based on the all the funded positions in the budget, I believe. So can you answer how the vacancies play into that number?
Hi, Corey Orlowski, OMB. The vacancies are based on what the salary schedules are, and the GWAs have the effect of adjusting the salary schedules. So when a vacancy is budgeted at, for example, 25% above the grade minimum, it's 25% above the new grade minimum that is adjusted by any GWA.
I'm not sure that I follow what you just told me.
Yes, the GWAs are factored in.
They are factored in.
Yes.
See, that's where I am. I'm a guy that counts the money in his register. All right, so if that's the case, what is the possibilities that we're going to be able to hire all of the people that we have vacant right now? Anybody have that
That's
globe?
what we've recognized with the additional lapse assumption.
And so I think we need to, compare apples to apples at times. And as for the possibilities of additional tax revenue, every one of us realizes that the government needs funds to provide services. No one likes to pay taxes, including me, but we use the services each and every day that are provided, that's provided to us. But taxes are not paid by some entity. They're paid by individuals and families and businesses, and many of whom are struggling to make ends meet as well. So we need to keep that in mind. And could we have, and there again, you don't have to off the top of your head, but could we have clear examples of how much a family would be paying in property taxes? Obviously, there's other taxes associated with this, but in property taxes for their average home, whether it be a townhome or a single-family detached home or whatever it is, for an average home in Montgomery County, how much more would a family have to pay in property taxes each year? As we went through the discussions on the rent public hearings, we had people that said, look, I can't afford $30 or whatever the number was. Well, if it's a $550,000 home on the average, and I don't know if that includes townhomes and if that was just single-family detached, but if that's the case, that's $40, $50 a month for that family. So what are we doing to that family? And how are we going to figure this out? And part of it has to be economic development. But economic development ain't going to happen in 10 minutes. And then we have to figure out the commercial side, because the commercial obviously subsidize, whether people want to use that term or not, they subsidize residential. And how much would it cost? I'd like clear examples. If someone has an apartment building or in other residential units, if they receive that 10% increase, and if there's other additional reassessments as well that they might have received, how much does that cost per residential unit? How much is that property owner paying to keep that residential unit in existence? And I think that's necessary. And the last thing I'd like to get as an example is when we talk about recordation tax. And you know, it's something to say, well, we can get more and more. How much more is it going to cost a person or family that wants to have their dream, that wants to own a home? How much more is it going to cost them to come to the settlement table to fulfill that dream? Because recordation tax is paid right then. It's not paid over the life of the mortgage. And we need to have all of those numbers. We need, in my opinion, we need to keep in mind that taxes are not paid for. We need taxes, don't get me wrong, and I certainly understand how we have to get additional funds. But we need to keep in mind that taxes come from people and businesses who are also made up of people, and we need to make certain that Montgomery County keeps them in mind as well. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Katz, final word on this is coming from Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. A couple of things. I will say thank you to Council President Glass for his approach to dealing with the operating budget. I think it was great, and especially for some of us who are new, it's great guidance, so thank you for that. One disappointment when I saw the budget, I mean there are lots of them, but one of them that was highlighted to me was the lack of funding for early childhood education. It must be fully funded if we're truly talking about having a county that believes on education and having a strong, talented workforce. We need to start with kids before they get to kindergarten. So that's one thing. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said, but I agree with a lot of them. I would say that I want to emphasize that we must increase the tax base. You know, we have to. We need to increase more housing in the county, more jobs into the county. I just came back from Taiwan with a county executive, an amazing, highly productive trip. I'm thankful to him for bringing me with him. And as I was talking to different companies in Taiwan, companies that focused on life sciences and technology, they were asking about the quality of life in Montgomery County. And I talked about education, and I talked about the beautiful parks that we have, and the trails, and our transportation system. But then they also ask, well, you know, what about early childhood education? What about housing? Because we don't just want to move to Montgomery County. We want our employees to live in Montgomery County. So that's something that needs to be factored on this operating budget. And I look forward to our different committee sessions to deal with this. The last thing I would say on the homestead application, I've been dealing and working with different folks in my district. You know, the State of Maryland homestead application website, it's not working. Sometimes you walk in and people are spending a lot of time trying to download the application. So what we're doing in my office is telling people to, and I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, to download the hard copy, the application, because the online is not working properly. It's bad, and the deadline is on May 1st. That's like couple weeks from now. I know I'm actively talking to folks, especially in Spanish media, about this, because at the end of the day, it's the most vulnerable communities who are affected by this. So I gotta tell you, I haven't seen the county, besides that little paper, the yellow paper that you mentioned, that's not enough to remind people I need to file this. So expect more from our county to do that. I'm doing what I can. So let's please, I don't know, if you guys can talk to your communications folks to speed it up, that'll be great. Yeah. And that's it. I yield back to you, Council President.
There you go. Thank you, Council Member Fanny Gonzalez. Thank you, colleagues, for all of your questions. This is the start of the process, so we will engage much more over the next few weeks. And I think it was Councilmember Balcom who apologized for getting into the nitty-gritty, but that is what we're here for. No need to apologize. And while you've heard from us and our preliminary thoughts and questions, we are going to be taking this afternoon, this evening, and the afternoon and evening on Thursday to hear from more than 150 of our residents, an unprecedented number, because this is a really important budget and these are really important decisions. So with that, thank you to council staff, thank you to the executive staff, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you. Okay, colleagues. It is almost afternoon, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez. Not quite afternoon, but this next item will take us into the afternoon. And this next item is a work session on the FY23 to 28 capital improvements program, specifically 5 aspects of the culture, education and culture, and also recreation budgets. I will turn it over to the chair of the E&C committee, Chair Jawando.
Thank you, President Glass, and I see we have our various folks making their way down, Director Dice and Ms. Vassallo. I didn't see Mary Beck from OMB, but I see our, I'm looking right at you, Deborah Lambert from OMB. Sorry, senior moment. And we have Carolyn Shin. Just wanted to say at the top, we took this up in E&C last week, and we'll start with libraries. And while normally Councilmember Mink, as lead for libraries, would lead this, she was ill and wasn't able to participate in the session. So that's why these votes are 2-0. But I know she's reviewed it and is okay. But Councilmember Alvarez and I held it down that day. Just wanted to mention a couple things at the top, because I think these will be pretty quick. The refresh program was mentioned as we start with libraries as one of the really successful programs that we've had in the county. I think Councilmember Alvarez mentioned that. And Damascus is the last one in the cycle, and is excited to begin next year, and then we'll restart over with Silver Spring and others. And so Director Dice gave us an update on that, and as did Director Vassallo. And I just think it's a really important, successful program, and a couple of these are related. A couple of these items are related to the continued funding that's needed for Damascus, and the level of effort of $950,000. So that's the first item. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Chen in a moment, but I just wanted to bring that up. The other things are related to delays of Chevy Chase Library to assess affordable housing, and we got an update on that, and a promise of another quick comeback update this summer on where those things, how that's progressing, as well as a delay of Clarksburg. And I think I know Councilmember Balcom has joined us before and cares about that, as we all do, to fulfill that commitment, but to also assess affordable housing on that site. And so that's why we concurred with the executive's delays of these items. And then there was there's another delay on a 1-year delay on the noise library project for young children to rebid because of issues there. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Chen to tee up anything, and then if there's any comments from Director Vassallo or Director Dice.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Chen, legislative analyst with the County Council. I actually just have a point of procedure. This agenda was drafted off of the January 17th CIP amendments, so noise library is not included in this agenda item, even because it was came over on March 15th, so we'll have that amended, revised, but we are then discussing the CIP amendments that came over January and March for libraries.
Great. All right, we'll preview on noise. Mr. Vassallo, anything to add?
Anita Vassallo, Director, Montgomery County Public Libraries. In the terms of the adjustments to the projects in this CIP, Libraries definitely supports the delay in the Chevy Chase and Clarksburg projects in order to explore affordable housing, or in the case of Clarksburg, Child Care Center. We're grateful that the Damascus project is going forward as scheduled, and we certainly understand that with the bid costs that came in for the noise project, that's not a possibility for us in this CIP, so we support the amendments as put forward.
Thank you. Director Dice, anything to add?
Just one thing regarding the library refurbishment program. This Saturday at 10 a.m. is the ribbon cutting on the Potomac Library, and I would encourage everyone that can come to come. A very interesting project. It's amazing how all of these work. That when I came to Montgomery County, one of the first things that struck me was how much this community loves its libraries. And we started building all these great big libraries, but what the community really enjoys is their library.
Right.
And so it's always a thrill to be able to welcome a community back, and that's what it's all about. Welcome back to your new old library. So encourage everyone to come to that, and but it's also illustrative of the fact that we really care about this. I love doing libraries, and the opportunity to do every single one of them is different, and they really do reflect their communities, and that's why it's important that the effort we put into these libraries, particularly when we can enhance them even further with affordable housing, is worth it. So
Appreciate that, and we look forward to those updates. And I think Councilmember Mink will be there on set. I don't know. Yes. So my favorite time is when the crowds are waiting and they're waiting for us to stop talking, so that they can rush in. So it's a great thing. So with that, these were unanimous recommendations, 2-0, just with the absence of Councilmember Mink, to the full council.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Dice, I look forward to hearing the Welcome Back Cotter theme song, as is a prerequisite for every refurbishment. I see Councilmember Friedson has a comment.
Thank you for that. Potomac Library is actually my childhood library. I will be there as well. Spent a lot of time in that library as a kid. My nieces and nephews spend time in that library, and look forward to being back. I think we need to work on a better term than new old library. So you have between now and Saturday to come up with that. I think that's like the senior, older adult, mature adult situation. So let's, yeah, exactly. This actually would I think count as a library over 65, or at least be darn close.
Well, I have made the comment that if many of our buildings were people, they'd qualify for Medicare.
And this would be an example of that as well. Appreciate the committee's work. I just wanted to briefly touch on Chevy Chase Library and redevelopment. The council had asked for the executive branch to come back in the fall. That didn't happen based on not being prepared to do so, and scheduling issues, I suppose. But could you walk through what the plan and process is going to be for this project, how we're going to be communicating it with the public, how you're going to be working with the council on it? I understand that the thought is to perhaps come back in the summer, but could you go into a little bit more detail on what that's going to look like and what's under consideration? I've heard housing obviously was the focus, but I've heard childcare may be, considered. I know Councilmember Albornoz has raised that as a possibility. So if you could share that.
Sure. Good morning, Greg Austin, Department of General Services. As is the case in all of our CIP projects, we look at both affordable housing and childcare. It's an obligation, it's law, so we do both. Even though the focus at Chevy Chase has been on housing, we will continue to look at both. As you may recall, we did a lot of public outreach as it relates to Chevy Chase and the future of Chevy Chase Library. We had a series of open houses. We put out an RFP to the development community to see if there was interest in a redevelopment scenario. All that to say, we're really working with three different options. It's to simply remodel or renovate the library as it is today, and that is very similar to what we're doing in other libraries, Potomac in particular, that you'll see on Saturday. Another option is to introduce an infill affordable housing project and renovate the library. And then a third option is to do an entire redevelopment of the site to include affordable housing and/or childcare. All of those have different costs associated with them, and they are exponential in that order as I cited them. And that is obviously a concern and impacts the CIP overall. What we intend to bring to you this summer is a fairly comprehensive summary of all three of those options, the costs associated with them, and then offer our suggestions, recommendations for moving forward, and obviously seek your counsel on how we move forward as well. So that's the intent of the next briefing, is to compile all the information that we compiled in the last year or two and bring it back for a full comprehensive review.
Yeah, last year during the budget discussion, there was language specifically added that the current chair of the committee put forward and was supported by the council. How does that language jive with this process?
You'll have to remind me on the language that was included.
I think council staff could, or Councilmember Jawanda could, if you'd like. I mean, I could paraphrase.
At least paraphrase it.
Just say briefly that the housing would be explored on the site. I mean, you know, Ms. Chen might have the exact.
And actually, funding is contingent on that.
Yeah. So it couldn't be just a remodel. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. I mean, I raised this because we set a timeline. We failed to meet the timeline. So the timeline was the fall. The purpose of that timeline that was set by the council was so that we'd be prepared for the budget. We're not prepared for the budget. So we're going to pass the budget in the absence of any plan for the site with a 2-year delay. With language, I presume, unless we change the language, and I'm not sure that's before us right now, we'll have language in there that predisposes the site to a certain outcome that you're going to be coming back to the council in the summer to discuss. And so, if the plan is we're kicking the can down the road for 2 additional years, we don't have to change the language until we get closer to making a final decision, then, I understand that. I'm not sure I accept it, but I understand it. But I just think we have to be honest here. And one of the challenges, I don't want to relitigate this issue like we did last year, but yes, there has been quite a bit of community outreach, but the mixed messages that have come on what is anticipated and what is being proposed for this site has caused more confusion than clarity. So, just having meetings with the public is not enough if every time you have a meeting you're suggesting doing something else, or you're suggesting being able to accomplish something that is literally impossible to achieve. And we talked about this last year where we went through what the county executive's goals were for this site: to remodel, to have housing, to not have too much height, to be in line with the community, to have the community. All of those are worthy goals, but you can't do everything. And we had a conversation earlier today about the budget, about picking and choosing, and what happens and what the consequences are when we don't pick and choose. And ultimately, on this site, at a certain point, the county executive is going to have to make a decision, and he's going to have to communicate that decision with the public and be held accountable for that decision. And then we're all going to have to make a decision based on that decision, and we're also going to be held accountable for those decisions. So I just want to put a marker down here and make sure that we're being honest about what is being proposed, what we're actually going to do, allow the community and allow broader residents in the county, because our libraries don't belong to one neighborhood or one community, they're county assets, and I recognize that and appreciate that. But we just have to be straightforward with what we're trying to do, what we want to do, get feedback from it, and then make a decision, and then accept the consequences of the decisions we make, which we recognize are not going to make everybody happy. And I feel like in this case, it has been a challenge where in the absence of coming up with a perfect solution, we're going to end up with nothing. No housing, no library, no child care center. And that's not an acceptable outcome.
If I can, that's not going to happen. There is, the library itself is in desperate need of having some work done to it. We're going to be in a position to have to maintain it as it is until such time as it can be done. So doing nothing is not an option, nor has it ever been an option. I was the one that pulled the strings on what was originally a refurbishment, because the cost of that refurbishment came too close to a new library, and it was obvious that there were opportunities present at that site for affordable housing in conjunction with, or in addition to, or as Mr. Assant pointed out, a wholesale relook at that. But there are a number of options. I don't favor the term that you used, let's be honest, because no one's been dishonest. We have been pondering a lot of those options. This project for fiscal capacity is in the out years of the CIP. We're not sitting back doing nothing as a result of that, but there are a wide number of options. And we don't want to necessarily be satisfied with putting 1 or 2 little affordable towns on there and say, there, we did it. You wouldn't be satisfied with that either. So we want to maximize the potential of that site, but it all ultimately comes down to what's our palette of taste for the cost of that project. And those will be part of the briefing that you'll get.
I appreciate that. So I think we need to take a look at the budget language before we approve it, because I do think it has an impact on what happens here, and I think the council should weigh in on that. I don't think we're going to do that today, but before we approve the final budget, really do appreciate Councilmember Jawando, chair of the committee, previously raising these issues and forcing this discussion that we had at last year's budget deliberation. I'm not suggesting that there's been dishonesty, but I do think there have been highly unrealistic expectations that have been set. And we can't do everything. And we're not going to make everybody happy. And at a certain point, if housing's not going to happen, it's going to be childcare, and there are reasons for that, let's talk about it. If they're not going to be childcare or housing, there's just going to be a library for reasons, make that case, make that point. But we have to do that, and to allow for RFPs to go out to ask for proposals that we're never going to accept is not reasonable, and to ask the community members to believe that something is going to happen that perhaps won't, I think really does create challenges. So I'll just note this is my mother's childhood library, so another personal dynamic here as well. I appreciate the work that you're doing here. I hope that we can work together as council and county executive, but I hope that we can be realistic in terms of the timelines and in terms of what we're actually seeking for this site and for other sites, so that we can have honest and serious conversations with the public, which I know in good faith you will attempt to do. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Turn it over to the lead for libraries, Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I wanted to first express my great appreciation to my colleagues on the E&C committee and apologize for being out on a big libraries day especially, but I of course agree with all the votes that were taken. They would have been 3-0 votes had I been there. Certainly especially excited that we are going to be investing in our libraries and on a timeline that's going to enable us to consider co-locating affordable housing. I do think that obviously it's a challenge. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but this is something that there is a lot of energy behind from a lot of different people in a lot of different corners of the government, and I have faith that we can and will work together to get some great things done for the county. We certainly saw during the pandemic the increased possibilities that there are for the use of our libraries to reach our communities and provide really essential services and meeting points between the government and the public in a lot of really important ways. And I think that is the beginning of a trend that should continue. Libraries are truly essential hubs for our communities in a lot of different ways. Much like schools, they are uniquely positioned within our community to be a point of interaction between us and the public, and especially families with children, which is essential for so many ways. And so tapping into that and finding new and creative ways to use that meeting point, I think that is a tool that I certainly am very excited to use more, and especially with the new tools we have before us to hopefully increase the co-location of affordable housing at our library sites. That only further emphasizes both the importance and the possibilities of using our libraries in this way, and also using that as a way to get kids more engaged in literacy. So it's really kind of a beautiful cycle, that an opportunity that we have there. And I also wanted to note along with that, as we have for schools, given that libraries, like schools, are such critical meeting points for services and the delivery of services from the county to our residents, it becomes even more essential that we keep our libraries, like our schools, fully staffed up and fully functional, and that we are not overburdening our staff members in those places, that we are compensating them properly, that we are continuing to retain and to attract. And I think it's really important that we all continue to be in very close communication with the staff on the ground to ensure that we are delivering what is needed in order to make that happen, because I think libraries, like schools, are especially essential and especially unique in this way. If we falter on staffing there, it causes a ripple effect of problems all across the county in many different areas that we care about, from public safety to health, to economic development and workforce development. All of these different places, the ripple effect is massive. So ensuring that we, again, are really working with our folks on the ground to deliver what we need to retain and attract is really important. And I also wanted to highlight that places like Chevy Chase, where we are pushing these timelines out in order to do these analyses, that making sure that staff who are there on the ground, that they have what they need in these, we realize that there's serious infrastructure challenges there, and that not only is the public continuing to use those spaces, but we also have staff who are working in those spaces day in and day out, ensuring that they are being taken care of properly within those buildings that are so much in need of the infrastructure enhancements that are coming, that they have proper heating and cooling, and that we're just doing what we can to make sure that the day-to-day challenges that we all acknowledge that they're facing and we're looking forward to addressing, but that we're doing our best to make sure that those work environments are up to par. And again, I think that ties into the retention aspect of things. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I know we're over. Bottom line is, after the presentations and the conversation this summer, we have to fish or cut bait, because every day that goes by, as Councilmember Mink just noted, we're putting Band-Aids on the HVAC system and doing our best to keep together, literally with Scotch tape, a building that needs to be renovated, and has needed it for quite some time. So, and it is appropriate that we have a longer runway, because we would have to make this decision within the context of a full CIP anyways, because if we are going to propose a project that is tens of millions or even potentially hundreds of millions, that will have a significant cascading impact on the rest of the CIP as a whole. And significant adjustments would have to be made to the entire CIP to accommodate this project, as worthy as it is. And so we are going to have to be honest on the cost implications and what that means for the broader CIP, remembering that we just talked about a $250 million deficit this morning for the current CIP. So, but there's opportunities that we don't want to miss. So I do look forward to the full conversation this summer, but we will need to expedite the decision making after those conversations.
If I could, for the record, hundreds of millions
yes,
of
tens
dollars.
of millions, tens of millions, tens of millions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I want to thank the ENC committee members for your advocacy for the Clarksburg Library and during your committee meetings. And the conversation that we're just having about the Chevy Chase Library is the reason that I'm anxious about the 1-year delay. And I've had great conversations with Mr. Assant and had the assurance that this 1-year delay is a 1-year delay. And so I think that I fully support the co-location of affordable housing, childcare. I think it's something that we've talked about how the county can contribute to affordable housing, but the assessment process needs to be swift, particularly with these projects. We kind of got caught in the middle of we believe in this moving forward, this legislation of co-location, but we need to be swift in making that assessment. So I have every faith that we won't have rehashed this conversation a year from now. So thank you.
We will be swift, and I know the chair will be swift in his comments too.
Thank you. Yeah, just to put a bow tie on it, the language, the thing we did with Chevy Chase Library last year, my amendment, which the previous council supported, changed the language to say that from a refresh to an actual total new library, and it changed the language to say that it will provide the new library with a mixed-use development at the site of the existing library. That's what the project description says in the CIP right now. So if there is any, and we talked extensively in committee about the offers that are coming in, what you're talking, and how you're going to come back and give us a very real-time fish or cut bait update in the summer so that we can decide how to move forward. And I appreciate Councilmember Balcom saying, you know, the Clarksburg Library is needed. There's a lot of money in this CIP for Clarksburg Library to start construction, so it cannot move anymore in the out years in 26 and 27. So we got to keep that in there. So I don't know if there's any comments, but I just wanted to make that point.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying it. I think, yeah, we owe you costs associated with those options at Chevy Chase, and I was just conferring with Director Dice. I think it would be advisable if we perhaps did a dual session and include the Clarksburg, just to stay on track. To your point, Councilmember Balcom, we are actively working with Elm Street and Third Tri on the Clarksburg Town Center, which is also trying to get underway, as I mentioned during the last work session. And so we are working swift to have things to share with council. I think we could do both at the same time this summer, if that meets with your approval, and the costs associated with all of those versions, so that you can have the context as we go into the FY25 discussions, if that meets.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. So we have 5 recommendations from the Education and Culture Committee regarding the CIP for library refurbishment level of effort, the Chevy Chase Library and redevelopment, the Clarksburg Library, the 21st Century Library enhancement level of effort, and the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center. And so, oh, we didn't talk about that. There we go. Sorry. I'm looking at you. Sorry. Everything but that. So we have 4 items.
Plus noise library.
I thought the noise was coming back up. Right. Oh.
We did discuss it in committee. It's just not on the agenda.
Got it. Okay. And noise library. So we will accept those recommendations without objection. Okay. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes, and then just moving to the Wheaton Cultural Arts Center, I saw we had a good discussion about that, and we've got some great Wheaton advocates in the audience here. Ms. Chen, I'm just going to to speed this up, I'm just going to turn to you to walk us through the practice. It was a unanimous recommendation, so go ahead.
Yeah. Wheaton Arts and Culture Center, the Education and Culture Committee met on March 30th to discuss 2 things. The first one is an FY23 supplemental appropriation for $75,000 with so that's not in the CIP amendment, just to be clear. And then the second was to discuss the CIP amendment, which includes a new budget and plan for the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center. To note, the fiscal year 23 CIP amendment of $75,000, harking back to Councilmember Balcom's note about supplemental appropriations. This is specifically so the affordable housing partner that the county has secured, Montgomery Housing Partnership, can apply for a low-income housing tax credit with the state now. And that's why, and the only reason why it's being put forth in 23. For the FY24 to 28, for previous council that was here, this was earmarked to have a plan, but not this fast, and we've got it this fast. And this is for a full build out of Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center at 11507 Georgia Avenue with affordable housing.
Thank you, and I'll just add, we had a lengthy and really good discussion about the location and raised all the community issues, and we talked about how awesome this center is going to be for Wheaton and the arts, and there's no perfect location, but we talked about how to enhance that location and get people there safely. We had a whole great discussion. So, but we approved both of those items, both the special appropriation and the location 2-0.
Very good. Thank you. Turn it over to the District Council Member, Fanny Gonzalez.
I just want to thank Council Chair Will Jawando for all his work in the entire committee and all the advocates and the folks who are here. I'm so happy to see you here. At the end of the day, folks, we want to make sure that Wheaton is walkable and bikeable. So I actually embrace this location, and I absolutely love the fact that it has an affordable housing component. We need more housing in Montgomery County, and this is ideal. I think it's a great role model for the nation too. We just did an amazing groundbreaking in Randolph Road not too long ago. This will be the next one, and I also want to thank the regional director for the area for all her amazing work. And I look forward to seeing this moving, and the community event that we're planning to do, just to see what's going to be inside. I will remind the county executive that I look forward to seeing him in that meeting, so we can all work together to see how this center is going to be made, and how awesome it will be for everybody, and effective, and move forward from this. So thank you so much for all your work. That's all.
Thank you. Not seeing any other comments, we will accept the committee recommendation without objection. Thank you all. Okay. It is afternoon, and we are on item number 8, the introduction of bills. We have a few more things before we recess, however brief that recess will be. First item on the introduction of bills is Expedited Bill 1923, Department of Police Pension and DSRP Adjustments. This has been introduced by the Council President at the request of the County Executive. A public hearing will be held on April 25th at 1:30 p.m. Ms. Wellens, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Council President. This bill, as well as the next two that will be introduced, are being introduced by the Council President at the request of the County Executive as a product of collective bargaining with the 3 main county unions. This bill before you relates to retirement benefits for Fraternal Order of Police retirees, and the main thrust of this bill would be to alter the Social Security integration age for those retirees, so that they would continue to receive their full pension amounts for a longer period of time. The current integration age is 67. This bill would change it to age 70. Also, a global comment just for this bill, as well as the next two, that although the public hearing isn't until the 25th, some of the substance of these pension changes, you know, as they were discussed earlier by Mr. Howard, they will also be discussed this Friday before the GO committee when they talk about compensation changes. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional information. So that bill has been introduced. Second bill, as alluded to, is Expedited Bill 2023, OPT SLT Bargaining Units Pension and Retirement Adjustments. A public hearing will be held on April 25th. And then also Expedited Bill 2123, Fire and Rescue Services, Credited Service for Group G members. A public hearing will also be held on April 25th, but as Ms. Wellens noted, work sessions are related to the budget and will be held later this week in the GO committee. All 3 bills are introduced. Thank you very much. Item number 9, moving on to bills for final reading. This is Expedited Bill 1323, Montgomery County Urban Districts, Friendship Heights Urban District. The Economic Development Committee recommends enactment with amendments. I'll turn it over to the Economic Development Committee Chair.
Yeah, thank you. The Economic Development Committee unanimously recommends enactment of Expedited Bill 1323 with amendments. This bill, led by Council Vice President Andrew Fritzen, will create a new urban district within the county, the Friendship Heights Urban District. For background, we currently have urban districts in Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wonderful Wheaton. Under the bill, a 5-member Friendship Heights Urban Advisory Committee will be appointed by the County Executive and confirmed by the Council. There were a couple of amendments that the entire committee agreed on. One was to state that the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce will nominate a business representative rather than a business owner. The other came as a suggestion from the Office of the County Attorney, and the Economic Development Committee agreed on that the bill should define the terms Class 1 properties and Class 2 properties. These terms are used in the bill to delineate between different types of property. The rate of the urban district charge will vary by property type to define the terms Class 1 properties and Class 2 properties. The committee adopted the following amendment. Class 1 property means real property used or intended to be used for residential use. In Class 2 property means real property used or intended to be used for commercial and industrial use categories under Chapter 59. This completes my report. Council President Glass.
Thank you very much for that thorough report. Now I'll turn it over to the bill sponsor, Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really appreciate your support of this at committee, and Chair Fanny Gonzalez for shepherding this through and for moving forward quickly, as well as Councilmembers Balcom and Sales for your support. This is the first of its kind in the region, a bi-jurisdictional effort between Montgomery County and DC to fund a joint effort for placemaking, for collaboration and partnerships to strengthen the commercial sector, for the ability to create people-oriented public spaces and support a vibrant business community. Really exciting. I think there are more opportunities to do similar efforts moving forward, creating more venues and opportunities for arts and culture and local entrepreneurship. The bill would create an urban district for the commercial center of Friendship Heights. On the county side, it will match a funding source on the DC side to fund the Friendship Heights Alliance, which the council seed funded, matching DC's efforts in last year's budget. Really want to thank as well to DC Ward 3 Councilmember Matt Fruman, who's introduced similar legislation to create a bid on the DC side to create their funding mechanism there, and just really pleased to see this decades long effort finally moving forward to create synergy across both sides of Western Avenue. It's a central location across DC Montgomery County at a red line station. We know that Friendship Heights is a great place, but it could be a much better place. It can serve residents in the region and in the community, and this effort here that this council is about to undertake will be a significant step forward in that direction to meet our economic development goals and to have a vibrant transit-oriented community that supports the businesses and the residents that live there and the needs that they have on a day-to-day basis. So thank you, Mr. President. I will yield back to you.
Thank you for introducing this, and we look forward to working with our partners in the district on this innovative approach for economic development and revitalization. This is a roll call vote, so Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Lukey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lukey votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Albornoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Albornoz votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. And Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. That is unanimous. Okay. In a related item, we're now going to sit as the district council to take up zoning text amendment 2303, or should be 0323. No, the way ZTAs are written. That's right. Inverse. Bethesda overlay zone extension. Sorry. A public hearing is scheduled for May 16th at 1:30 p.m. and a Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session is scheduled at a later date. Ms. Nadeau.
So this is a ZTA that was sent over by the Planning Board under the current zoning ordinance. The Planning Board, any site plan that uses BOS density has to obtain a building permit application within 2 years, and there is no extensions allowed for that due to some policy reasons around the Bethesda overlay zone, mostly preserving that density. So what this ZTA will do, it will grant a 1 year, one-time extension to all existing projects across the board. The reason for this is developers have reached out that they're facing some hurdles due to inflation rates and rising interest rates that are holding back their financing, which holds back getting that building permit application. So that is ZTA 2303.
Thank you very much, and that ZTA is introduced. Thank Thank you, Ms. Nadeau. Lastly, we are going to move to the consent calendar. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke and seconded by Vice President Friedson. All those in favor of the consent calendar? That is unanimous. And with that, colleagues, we are in recess until 1:15, when we will then have a proclamation by Councilmember Sales. See you all at 1:15.